Yo, what's going on, everybody? This is your brother Shakim. I cat right black at you once again. So, I was thinking about some things, and one of the things I was really thinking about that's been a real issue is school choice, right? Um, you have a lot of people that are for it, a lot of people that are against it. It's a growing trend, and as it being a growing trend, it becomes very controversial. Now, one of the things that I always talk about, especially when we're talking about school choice, is traditional schools, right? So traditional schools have been failing us forever. Like traditional schools, especially when you start talking about the black community. I'm here in South Carolina. South Carolina education has always been last. Schools have barely ranked, and we've always like been in the bottom five. It's very dangerous. Our kids are unable to compete on a national level, and the schools have not responded accordingly. There's a lot of cronyism and corruption. A lot of the boards, the local boards, don't really understand what's going on, and the problem is there's nobody to compete. Right? What's up? What's up, Rizan? If you want to talk, if you want to come on, hey, I send you the link. Um, but traditional schools have been unable to compete for a long time. And in South Carolina, we have something that's called a corridor of shame. The corridor of shame is a particular area, and a lot of it is in Jim Clyburn's district. The corridor of shame has historically been known to have schools that are. Hold on, let me uh, get Rajan in really quick. And anybody else who wants to join in, please let me know. But I want to have this conversation about school choice and traditional schools. Hold on. Let me, while I'm on here, let me send Raison a link so my good brother can come on in and have this discussion. Um, just give me a minute. And Raison, I sent you the link so you can come on at your liking, my brother. Um, so I sent it to you. So traditional schools have been failing us forever, right? I think this is something that is a topic that needs to be discussed. When you start talking about the reason why traditional schools fail, one of the things we got to look at is the lack of competition. There's no incentive for them to compete. There's no other business in town. Just like a lot of the energy companies, that's a specific field that's monopolized. There's only one particular business, and that's the energy company. Nobody else is allowed to compete. So traditional schools for a long time have set themselves up to where it's almost impossible to compete. And the people who don't have money to pay for private schools, they normally have to send their children to traditional public schools that are failing. So what that has done is it created a situation to where the parents had to deal with that traditional school, and there was no way out unless they had an exorbitant amount of money to pay for private school. That's really caused a big problem. So what are happening is that people are beginning to find ways in order to send their children elsewhere where they're not subjected to the tyranny of local school boards and government officials that really don't care about the children's education, and they're finding different ways, and people are finding different ways to be creative, right? Traditional schools, they normally aren't very creative when it comes to curriculum processes. You have politicians who have their say so, who are not educators. They come in and they just say, hey, this is what you have to teach. This is the curriculum. They assign all different type of things that, educators and principals don't have autonomy over, and parents don't have any say so. So when you start looking at school choice and charter schools, they provide more flexibility. In South Carolina, we started having the Montessori schools. You had different schools that have different focuses. whether it's aeronautics or math and science or whatever. But schools now, when you break away from that traditional mode of school, you have people who come in with great ideas and say, hey, whether it fails or not, it's better than what is already an option on the table. Elvin, I'll let you in on this. Elvin, let me send you a link. Elvin. Hold on, let me get you, Elvin. Let's see. I'm gonna get you in right now, Elvin. I'm gonna bring Elvin in. I'm sending him the link. All right. All right, Elvin, I just sent you the link. So you can get on whenever you. All right. I just sent you the link. So what's happening is that people are beginning to have more creative ideas. People are beginning to buck the traditional school system. There's always been a lot of excuses, and there's always been a lot of, things that local boards and state officials have. Their tyranny is being broken. The only way we're going to be able to fix this problem is people come in with new ideas, fresh, brand new ideas, and say, listen, we want to create a school that focuses on this particular aspect of education. We want to focus on a particular learning method. If their children who might be more auditory, you can actually create a curriculum that is suitable for those type of kids who have that particular learning method. You might have, children that are more hands-on. You can actually create a curriculum and have a school that is more geared towards those who are able to use their hands via trade schools. So with school choice and having options, it allows parents to be able to say, hey, listen, I like this particular school because this is what it provides, and this is the type of learning style that my child has. And I think this school is going to bring out the best in them versus sending them to a traditional school where it's more so of a you learn this way or you don't learn at all. And that is why a lot of people are getting frustrated. Then you see a lot of progressives, they are now coming in and saying that, they want sex education and stuff taught in kindergarten and things like that. A lot of people aren't for that. Whenever you start introducing sexual ideas at a young age, parents mainly want to have that particular conversation at home. I don't want a teacher who I don't know anything of teaching my children about sex education in kindergarten, right? Because I don't even know this person. This person could be a pedophile. This person could be whatever. But when you have schools that allow for different options, you could say, hey, you know what? This suits my particular need. And it's even better for the operation of the school, right? Because you have your own board. You have your own board of directors. You can, you have your own processes. You have your own disciplinary structure. You have your own voting structure. You have your own hiring processes. You can hire teachers based upon, your particular standards. It allows just more flexibility across the board. And a lot of times I hear people, fighting for traditional schools. I believe traditional schools do need to be fixed because not everybody can send their child, or there's not enough competition right now for a parent to be able to choose, what they want for their children. So we still need to build traditional schools, but traditional schools need competition right now. It's very important that competition is opened up in the field of education. Education is our future. Raison, I like that. I'm a 49ers man.
Listen, man, we do this, man.
I'm a 49ers man, so that's yeah. So
something, man.
So you being a former educator and having, let me move because my daughter's playing this game, having a little fun. So
Kids, man.
yeah, man, that's kids. That's a wonderful thing. Let me turn this light on in here. So you being a former educator, and I don't want to say former because you're still very heavily involved in education processes with students and teachers and mentoring. So you're still heavily involved in the process of education, and you understand what's going on. Are you an advocate of school choice? traditional schools. What's your take on this whole thing? And looks like Rezan might have froze up. I think Rezan froze up. So we're gonna wait on his internet connection to come back in. But so my take is this, right? When we're dealing with the traditional public school system, it's a failure. It's a failure, and it's not doing our children any good at this particular moment. And like I said, we need to have more competition in the area. And a lot of times, advocates of traditional schools, they don't want to see that competition. They don't want to see it. They want everybody to go to, one particular school in the area, which is a good concept, but that concept has never worked. If you look at the history, especially when you're looking at Black communities and things like that, school choice is definitely a conservative concept. And we got E.
What's good?
Man, I'm talking about school choice versus traditional schools, man. What's your take on all this?
All right, look, let me just drop the real with this thing, man. School choice is only, and I'm gonna say this, and I'm just gonna be real with it, right? School choice is only an option for gentrification. Did you lose me? Am I still there?
No, I'm still here.
Okay. School choice is only an option for gentrification. Let me break it down why.
Okay.
You got neighborhoods like the neighborhood behind North Charleston, Park Circle, the areas around Burke High School, right? Mm-hmm. Those areas, they want to change the dynamics. They want different people to move into that area, right? Mm-hmm. But you know how it goes when people with money and privileged people move into a neighborhood. They're not worried about if they can afford it. That's not the problem. They want to make sure their kids going to good schools. Mm-hmm. So school choice allows them to move into a neighborhood and take advantage of sending their child to a better school because the neighborhood school is not passing. Now, school choice is for everybody. Let me say that. But what the problem is that those in the neighborhood don't have the means and the money to take advantage of it. People who live in live behind North Charleston High School, they probably do want to send their kids to another school. But see, the way school choice works is you have to be able to provide transportation and means for your child to get to that school. There's no bus. So if you don't have if you're a working single mom, and you're working all day, or dad, vice versa, and you don't have anybody to pick your child up and take them to and from school, school choice won't benefit you. You have to have the means to take someone to a better school. Now, I agree with you. We definitely need to change dynamics. But school choice was not set. School choice was not set for those people who are living in that neighborhood. School choice was set for those who are moving into that neighborhood but don't want to send their kids to those schools.
Let me ask you a question. Has gentrification existed before school choice?
No. So let me correct myself. Yes, it has. However, gentrification sped up with school choice. It sped up with school choice because, again, people with money versus people who can barely afford to live in a house. They move into a house, they'll take whatever school is going to as long as they can afford the house. The problem is they can't, they have to live where they can afford. People who have money, that's not their problem. That's not their problem. They care about the schools their kids going to.
So let me ask you this. So what you're saying is just because white people are taking.
I say white.
Okay. Well,
white. But yeah, go ahead.
When you say gentrification, you're implying that it's white people, right?
Okay. All right. So.
Okay. All right. So what you're saying is because white people utilize an option that we shouldn't utilize an option also.
No, I didn't say that.
Okay.
What I'm saying is like, get me wrong. Like, okay, for instance, I lived in the Whaler. I did not send my daughter to North Charleston High School. Mm-hmm. Rajan, I know that's your automotive. Hey, sorry, I just wasn't doing it. I didn't send my daughter to North Charleston High School. I had the means in the way. Yeah, I had the means in the way to send my daughter to First Baptist. Now I had to pay for it. I had to drop her off to school. I got her a car so she can take herself to school. I had to pay for it, but I wasn't letting her go to North Charleston High School.
Let me say this. So you're saying that you took advantage of a school choice option, and it was better for you and your family.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
But you're saying that it's not a good idea for other children or other parents.
I never said it wasn't a good idea. I said the problem with it is that all the kids' parents, they don't have the means to take advantage of it.
Okay,
that's why you don't see a lot of the advantage.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. So if we can all agree that the traditional school system has been failing our kids since we've had an opportunity to go to public school.
Much agree.
Okay. So now, are you saying that we should stick to a strategy that has forever been failing and sacrifice our children in a dying public school?
No, I'm not.
Okay. So hold on. Okay. So this is my question. This is my question to you. You took advantage of school choice, but you're given the caveat or the warning that school choice is a bad idea because white people can use it as a mean to circumvent the traditional public schools in the area. Elvin actually disconnected. So,
word.
Yes, I can hear you, Razan.
Yeah, so sorry, I know you asked me a question earlier. My computer like completely froze and shut down, so I don't know what was going on there. Me and Apple gonna talk about that later. But yeah, so one, thank you for having this discussion. As always, I appreciate you, and I appreciate the diversity of thought and surrounding this topic. Mm-hmm. As you know, I held a forum on this topic. It was less about charter schools, more about the privatization of the school public school system. But one thing that I always pride myself on is being willing to listen to people, regardless of what they may think or whether I agree or disagree. So again, thank you for having this, conversation because it needs to be had. It's a conversation that has to be had if we're actually going to find our way out of this one way or another. Now, I've done a fair deal of reading on the topic of charter schools and how they impact public schools. I think that the general premise that charter schools are better than public schools is less than informed in a lot of situations, because I read an article from the New York Times today that talked about there are situations where charter schools have been proven to be more effective than public schools. Mm-hmm. I think it said that only 16% of all charter schools have been proven to be more effective than public schools. So there are situations where charter schools are more effective than public schools. The problem is that charter schools are often allowed to play by their own sets of rules.
Right.
So they may be able to say, yeah, we're more effective, but they're able to say we're more effective without actually playing by the same rules that the public school has to play under. Right. And that goes back to your point about the school district, right? So the things that the school district puts, on the charter schools, on the public schools to be able to function. You look at something like, I'll give you an example. Meeting Street Academy, right? Meeting Street Academy is a big topic of discussion in the Low Country. And one of the problems that a lot of people have with the Meeting Street Academy system is not that it's a bad system. It's that it's elitist and white saviorism at the same time. And that's the problem that a lot of people have with it. Also, the fact that the things that make Meeting Street Academy great as a public-private partnership, they should be able to provide in other schools, but the other schools don't have the resources that Meeting Street Academy has. And that's the chief complaint I've heard about Meeting Street Academy. Now, I don't have a critique one way or the other about the school because I've heard the school to do amazing things. But like you said earlier in this discussion, charter schools are allowed to play under a different set of rules. I'll give you another example. People talk about test scores all the time, right? People love to bring up the fact South Carolina is 47th, 48th, 49th in the country in test scores. Well, what a lot of people don't know is that most of the states that have the higher test scores have two things in common. One, their teachers are paid on average a much higher wage than here in South Carolina. The second thing is those states do not test 100% of their students. So there are states, I'll give you Connecticut, right? If a child has any kind of IEP, they don't test them. Mm-hmm. That cuts out pretty much like the bottom 50% of all the students that test in South Carolina. If you have any IEP, they don't test them. Think about that. So how do you compare a state like South Carolina to a state that doesn't test all their students? And then say, oh, this is an accurate measure of how effective the education is. So there's a couple things that we got to figure out when we're making this discussion that public schools are failing students. One, what is the metrics that we're actually using to decide success or failure? That's the first thing.
Okay.
Two, what kind of resources are we providing from state to state to state to make sure that the people have what they need to be successful in the field of education? I can tell you as a former teacher, I've never seen a teacher that walked into the building in public school, and I only taught in public school. I never had one teacher that walked in and said, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to fail these students. But you know what I did see? I saw teachers that walked in every day and said, you know what? I'm probably going to stay until 7, 8 o'clock tonight to make sure that these lesson plans are good to go for next week. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to call parents. I'm going to go knock on doors if I have to. I'm going to do extra training sessions during COVID. Well, I'm going to go to kids' houses and make sure they feel attached to the school. I'm going to do all these things. So I think when we have this discussion and we say things like the public school system is failing students, we are really being nearsighted and showing our appreciation for those people who have committed their lives to this. Much in the way like we talk about activism, right? Mm-hmm. Is all activism like positive activism? No. But when we highlight the negative activism as the standard of activism, we tear down all the people who do it the right way.
Right. So this is the thing, right? So what you see as the problem, I see as the solution, right? So we talked about playing by your own rules. And that's what competition is all about. Being able to play by your own rules to see who has the best playbook that can win games. It's just like a sport, just like competition. So this is the thing. Whenever you have a charter school or these partnerships, when they come in, it allows people to utilize their knowledge, their experience, their ability to, I would say, their human potential. It allows them to be able to put their curriculum and their methods out there to test. And a parent says, hey, listen, I want my child to be able to take this particular method because it works best for my child. I believe it opens up competition. So now people have to compete to get students. If your school is not good,
why can't we put those programs into the schools that exist?
Well, that good question. And I think people are tired of waiting on that question to be answered. Okay, I'm gonna let you in. See, people are tired of that question waiting to be answered. And that's where bureaucracy and big government comes into play, because we keep asking the same people over and over and over again about why can't we replicate Meeting Street Academy? Why can't we replicate this? Why can't we replicate that? And the boards are right now failing our children. There's not a lot of ideas coming, and there's no sort of different type of curriculums being introduced in these schools. So people right now are tired of saying, okay, why I can't actually sacrifice my child's education waiting on government bureaucrats to tell me why we're not getting funding, when I can go to another school that has the funding, and sometimes it's not even really the funding. It's like a Montessori school. Different styles of learning might be attractive to certain parents. So I think opening up that competition allows people to say, you know what, I'm going to choose this school versus a school that's failing my children. Now, Elvin, you did make points about hardships, because everything has trade-offs, right? Nothing is absolute. So like Rajon was pointing out, there's always going to be failing charter schools. And that's one of the things about competition. Is sometimes it doesn't work out, So I agree.
Let me add this. This is where I was going at before I got disconnected, right? So and everything Rajon said, and you just said is where I was going at. And I'll just start with this. 2 years ago, I was on the vetting committee with CCSD. And what the vetting committee was doing, they was going to try to find a partnership for the failing schools in Charleston. Remember that? The 9 failing schools in Charleston, right? I personally, just like everyone else there, turned down every partnership that could come across. Made sure we rejected it. Because I'm gonna tell you why. Okay. My whole thing was, just like Rajon said, is we're going to have these people come partner with these schools and then give them all this autonomy to do the things they want to do. We have principals and teachers in these schools right now that if they were given the autonomy to do what they want to do and how they felt they need to be done in their schools, could imitate the exact same thing we're seeing in these charter media schools, but they don't have it.
Okay, so if you're saying it's a problem that they don't have it, if another school or partnership comes in and says, hey, we want the ability to be able to do what they want to do, but government bureaucrats are stopping them, why would you stop that? So what you're doing is you're saying you're gonna totally shut down a school that has the autonomy and the ability to be creative. You're going to shut that down and force a child to continue to go to a traditional school that's been failing forever. And you're going to basically make your decision to shut that down because.
No, what the argument was, and we continued to pound home because, like I said, this needs to be addressed, is we were fighting, and my fight has always been, why didn't Burns Elementary get the same autonomy as Meeting Street Academy? Why doesn't, why is it that
government?
I understand that. that. So what's going to happen eventually? This is what's going to happen. And I don't have a problem with Meeting Street Academy. Let me tell you why I don't. Because 2 years ago, I was at that school board meeting when it came time to renew the contract of Meeting Street Academy. I spoke to half the parents in that school. I sat to the school for a day. I spoke to half the parents. I was at that school board meeting. When I tell you they love that school, those parents love that school. They love that school. So this is why I don't have a problem with it. Because see, charter schools, we do have black charter schools. You're right. But the top charter schools and the top magnet schools in Charleston aren't for black kids. They aren't. You name the top charter school, and I tell you the percentage of black kids that go there. You name the top magnet school in Charleston, and I tell you.
So this is the thing. Why are we stifling our kids, focusing so much on what white people are doing when we have an option where we can create a whole new model to where we can be innovative thinkers also and replicate successful models? I don't understand why are we so. If we see that, it doesn't matter if these particular schools.
Because let me explain why.
Okay, so let me explain why. Okay, hold on. Let me finish. I'm gonna let you jump in. I'm gonna let you jump in.
Because I can answer that question. I want to answer that question you just said just now. I want to answer that. Okay. This is the problem. Why? Because when you deal with a lot of charter, like Meeting Street Academy, they have their own private partnership. They go get their kids. They have their own bus company. They don't use the first student. They have their own bus that goes and get their kids, right? But every charter school in most charter schools and most magnet schools, the top ones, don't have that situation. So where if you live in a school choice neighborhood, for instance, if I live behind North Charleston High School, I want my kids to go to a Wando. I want my kids to go to what's academic magnet. But if I don't have the means, first of all, academic magnet, they got to test there. But let's say Wando. If I don't have the money and the means to get my child to that school, then they have to go to the neighborhood school. Okay. And that's what's happening.
Okay, so but this is okay, so let me say something. So as competition grows, right? And as people go out and try to figure out how to get students, then they're going to eventually have to provide buses. They're going to have to, right? That's what competition brings about. It takes time to evolve. So let me say this. What we have now is a proven failure. So we have to be able to be open to new successful ways that we can get our children to have. And I believe parents should be given a voucher, and that money goes and follows the school. The reason why I say this, if you decide, just say, Raison, you decide to get with some wonderful educators and y'all decide to open up a school. If South Carolina says, hey, we're averaging, I'm going to just throw out a number, I really don't know. Just say they want to say, we're going to give each student a $6,000 voucher, and that money is going to come to you. If you go and you get a lot of kids in the community and you have successful educators with you, you could take that money and you can go and create a school and you can say, hey, our model is built on success. I'm a proven educator. I'm a mentor. I've worked with these particular people. We know what it takes. This is our board of directors. You don't have to depend on somebody you might not like I'm gonna just say Postaway because some people don't. Okay. But I'm just use that name or McGinnis or somebody or just say Pi. You can say, listen, you no longer have to be under their governance. You already making claims that they're incompetent. So we have something that we created that is filled with nothing but competent educators. If you have the experience on what type of disciplinary practices exist, you can mesh that into your own working plan in order to say, hey, listen, this is what I have to offer. This is what I'm going to do to compete. Each child has a voucher. I'm going to bring it to my school. You're going to learn, and we're going to grow this school. What do you?
I don't ever foresee that happening. That's the first thing. So I think just the premise is, and not to be condescending, I apologize if it comes.
Why you don't think it won't happen?
But because that puts too much power in people's hands. And you and I both know that anything that puts a bunch of power in the people's hands, shoot, we got to fight to vote, bro. And then I'm gonna give us $6,000 and say, go to any school you want to go to. That's just not gonna happen. And then but if that were to happen, right? One, I would not open a school. That's the first thing. I think that is so important that the people who know how to run schools run schools. It's just like my whole thing about mentorship, right? People want to mentor and then they open mentoring programs. But that's not mentoring. That's running an organization. It's two different skills. Mm-hmm. And so running a school is a totally different thing than teaching. I liked teaching a lot. I'd never want to run a school under no circumstance. That's a bunch of paperwork that I wouldn't want. So just that premise, I wouldn't do it. Well, but I understand what you're saying. I think what would happen in that case is we would see that private school enrollment would go up exponentially. Because if I'm a parent, you give me $6,000 per child as a voucher, not money that I can spend, but money I can take to a school and say, this is my child's tuition. I'm not going to I use a Joe Smith school that he started because he's passionate about education. I'm sending him to Pinewood Prep. I'm taking him to First Baptist. If you give me $6,000 to get my child the best education possible, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to a private school. So that would completely deconstruct the public schooling system altogether.
Okay, but this is the thing. This is the thing. That's what we want. They have to have competition because right now they're the only person in the game.
But so that pulls more money out of the public schools, though.
Okay, but this is the thing. This is the thing. You have to take money out of them in order for them to wake up and say, "Hey, we got to do something about it." You have to at this point. There's no way that you can continue. And I said it benefits white. I'm looking at the comment. It benefits white private schools and white families. It could benefit black people too, right? It can benefit us. It could benefit us.
It would benefit black education. I definitely think that idea would benefit black education, but it would shut down public schools altogether.
Okay, this is the thing. But you have to make public schools afraid that there's competition, because as long as they can go without having competition and having somebody there saying, listen, we're going to take this money from you if you don't perform, that's going to make them say, hey, listen, we got to step our game up. The only thing right now, because they've been failing for so long, they never felt a need. There's never been pressure on them in order to perform because they're the only one in the business. They're a monopoly. So since they have a monopoly on education, when the school is failing, all they can do is just look at it and say, oh, okay, it's failing. They don't pay attention to it. And it's like, okay, it's failing. And there's no pressure on the local boards. So in order for them, see, when you start taking money out of the school district budget, you're taking money from white schools too, because there's a pot of money in the budget.
Agreed.
So if I'm taking money from just
Agreed.
Yeah,
I mean, if you take that same situation, right? Let's take a school like Wando, and I wish Elvin was here because he could give us the stats to go with the percentages of each school and all of that. I don't know those numbers, but a good deal, though the majority of Wando's population is white, they got a lot of black students. So if you told each of those black students, oh, y'all got $6,000 to pick the school that you want to go to, again, the families with the means to be able to say, okay, cool. Well, I got the money to go to any school I want to go to. I'm sending my kid to First Baptist. I'm sending my kids to Butte Academy. I'm sending my kids, like I'm heading to Porter-Gaud. I'm heading to what's the one that's like all of these, like that's where I'm sending my kids. If you give me $6,000.
Right. And that's and I believe that's the benefit of having school choice, because now it opens up that competition. So now they're going to have to compete, because when the public school system sees money leaving out of their district, leaving out, then they're going to be forced to say, listen, we got to do something, because we can't. It's just like a business. just like a business. When you start losing customers, then you start thinking of ways that, hey, we gotta. I just use Andrea said 6,000 won't go far, but I'm just using that number as like a hypothetical, right? So I don't want to get like too caught up in semantics.
He used the number 6,000 as a number to throw out. We're just talking about generic.
We just threw that out. So I believe in order right now at this particular juncture in education, I believe that the only message that is gonna make traditional schools step their game up is by competition being opened up and people saying, listen, we're ready now to compete. And when people have different ideas, different learning models, different behavioral models, all type of different things that people can now take advantage of, I think that is what's going to say, hey, either put up or shut up.
Question.
It works both ways. Go ahead.
So question, what do you think hamstrings these schools? When we're talking about these schools failing, and then we say, it comes from the school board. What do you think is causing this hamstringing of the schools? Like when you talk about their success rate?
They're a monopoly. I think that they're a monopoly. So by them being a monopoly, the only thing that can really hurt them is being the only thing that can hurt a particular board member is being voted out. But other than that, whenever you have no competition or you have there's nothing that it drives them in order to really do better. A failure has become such a norm, and the expectation is the norm. And hey, there's no competition. And by you being a monopoly, I think what hamstrings them is not having to look over their shoulder. I mean, year after year after year, they're delivering the same results. These reports come out showing that this school is failing. The superintendents, they go into school, they look around, they say, okay, well, we'll fix this, we'll build them another school or whatever. And the same results keep happening over and over and over again.
All right, so I'll change the question because maybe a question I asked wasn't direct to what I was trying to get to.
Okay.
Why is North Charleston failing?
Because there's no competition.
So you think people? So when I went to North Charleston, our student population was at least 1,200 people.
Mm-hmm.
North Charleston population right now is less than 300.
Right. So the reason.
So but listen, tell me how that means there's no competition.
Okay. Now this is the thing. They were failing before all of those students left.
North Charleston was not a failing school when I went to North Charleston High.
No. Yes, these our schools all together. Our schools all together have not really been in the best of shape in South Carolina. They haven't really been.
But my point is, it was not in 2001 when I graduated. Mm-hmm. North Charleston High School was not what it is now. So you got to look at what changed.
Right.
And it was not that there was no competition.
Right. So what's changing now are parents are saying, listen, we want an option to be able to send our children in other places to get a better education. The teachers are being hamstringed by a lot of the state legislator, the state government and school boards who don't have the ability, because if you go talk to a school board member, they're going to say, well, the state controls this and the state does that and the state does this, and they have so many standards and things that they have to meet, and they don't really have, and you can attest to this, that there's not a lot of autonomy with the curriculum. Is that correct? It's a little bit, but not a lot.
Right.
So with that being said, since they don't have a lot of autonomy in these things, they're stuck to one particular mode. You got somebody who opens up a Montessori school and they say, you know what? I kind of like that model. That model kind of works for me. It's maybe a little successful. Or you might have a school that opens up a school of the arts, an art school, that has a focus on art. So I think what's happening is these creative models are coming up and people are wanting to take advantage of them, but the traditional schools are still stuck with that same old model that's been failing for so long. Except what?
Except when you look at Garrett Academy of Technology, which was a tech school, which was specifically designed to teach trades. They just shut that school down.
Right.
So again, we can't look at it and say, oh, we're just going to make sure that there's more competition. When you're shutting down schools that are designed to do the exact same thing that you're saying these new schools are bringing.
You know what, Gary, got shut down? Years of neglect. Years of neglect.
By who?
That's the government run school boards.
Okay.
The government neglected the school, and the school got shut down. They had rats in the school. The school was, we had pictures. Somebody sent me pictures and said, hey, man, we were killing rats in the lunchroom. The structure of the school was falling apart. They could have done something about that school for the longest, but a lot of government bureaucracy and a lot of red tape led to that school actually being neglected. So hence, now you have a government neglected school. So people chose to take their children out of that government neglected school and take them somewhere where they can get a better education.
Okay, so I don't have the numbers on this. So maybe you do, and hopefully maybe Elvin comes back in and he can tell us how much money from the government goes into building these new schools.
I have no idea.
I would dare say it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I would dare say it would be enough to fix whatever problems they had at Garrett.
Yes, I agree.
They tore down North Charleston High School, had the same football field from the time it opened until they tore it down.
Right.
No, we didn't even get a Titantron from the time they built that school. We had the exact same scoreboard that they had when I was there, when I got there in 96, till they had when I graduated. It was all the same stuff when they built it. When they said, oh, we're leaving Bonds Wilson and we're building North Charleston, same facilities, right? Mm-hmm. What improvements did they make at North Charleston High School since I graduated?
Right.
You know what improvement they made?
How many?
They took away outside. When I went to North Charleston High School, there was a courtyard. And I keep coming back to North Charleston because I'm very passionate about that place.
Yeah, word. Yeah, that's alma mater.
We had a place called the Courtyard, which was outside. You'd come from outside the building. You'd come from inside the building, being inside all day, and you'd walk through the courtyard. People would be outside. People would be reading. People would be talking to friends. We had a tree. Then we'd freestyle under the tree. You'd walk into the cafeteria. That entire space is now inside. How much money did it take to take outside away from North Charleston? And explain to me how that money was better spent than improving Garrett Academy.
Right. And that goes back to my argument. Government, when they get involved in the education, they're slow, they're neglectful, they're neglecting our schools. So that's why I believe you have to open up. They're allowed to make reckless decisions like that when they're the only game in town. They're the only game so they can make those decisions and not have to worry about too much because they feel like, well, they can't go nowhere else anyway. They got to stay here. But what's happening?
I don't feel that way though.
Huh?
I don't think they feel that way. I know people that serve.
So why do you feel the government is neglecting the schools?
So one, I think it's a lack of allocation of resources. So I'm actually finished up a class on managing financial resources in government. Okay. That's why I'm like that's why I'm like. Word. When you look at the pot, when you look at the governors, and if those who have not done it yet, and I'm pretty sure almost nobody's done it, right now they're in the process of creating the statewide budget for next year, for the upcoming fiscal year, right? And in July, they begin this process. In January, the governor has to submit his executive summary of what his budget is for the year, right? He gets to submit every place that he wants money to go to the dollar. To the dollar. If you go to the state website, you can Google it right now. You can find it. You know exactly what he wants to spend money to. Every institution, every nonprofit, major nonprofit entity, every sector. You get to find education is one of those things. You find out how much money is being put into education. Not only do you find how much money he wants to put into education, you find how much money he wants to put into individual institutions. So you talk about like College of Charleston, Clemson University. Something that I was really very interested to find out is Clemson University receives the most government funding than any other college in this state by far. Very interesting topic there. As a father of a Clemson student, shout out to Vari. I know you're not watching, but I love you. But so when you get to look at those things, you can also look at. So after that happens, the governor submits his executive summary. He sends it to the legislators.
Okay.
Right now, I'm just walking you through processes now.
Okay, I'm listening.
It sends it to the legislators, and the legislators get to say, okay, we're going to adopt what the governor says, or we're going to fight and push back on a completely separate budget. But if you really want to see what's happening, you need to be looking at what Governor McMaster is suggesting, because that's the starting point for the statewide budget. So when you're talking about the education system being hamstrung by resources, we got to first look at how many resources are being allocated to which areas and why. And then we ask the questions from there. What kind of budgets are being created around these schools? Let's look at school to school to school. More public information. This is a FOIA thing, right? It's public information. What is the school budget for the year? District to district to district. Because we talk about BCSD versus DD2 versus Charleston County. Berkeley County School District, I know this for sure because I've sat in on these meetings. Berkeley County School District is a zero-sum budget district. That means that teachers have to budget out their entire year before the year even starts. Principals have to submit a budget from zero to what they're going to spend every year. So that means in March, they need to know what they're going to need for the entire year. And then they push that to the school district for them to say yay or nay. Okay. Those are things we got to be looking at. So when we say things like, oh, you know, I think that the Charleston County School Board or BCSD or Dorchester District 2 are just sitting back like, well, they don't have any other choices, so they're going to eat the meal we give them. I don't think that's the case. I think it starts at a much higher level, and we got to start to figure out what is the difference between what the schools within the public school districts is giving them, and what are they being offered by these charter schools that makes it different, that makes these people want to go over there. I love this idea that, oh, let's pull out a special skill. But guess what? Academic Magnet, that's a magnet school. That's a public school. They receive public funding. Public funding that if you wanted to, shoot, Academic Magnet started out on Burke campus. So you mean to tell me you can't put those resources into Burke High School to build that program, to infiltrate? No, we got to have a completely separate school.
That's my point. When the government is involved in education, it has historically proven to be a failure. All of those points that you made are really relevant, and that's one of the main reasons why I've said, you know what? We need to open up a whole new system to where they can't get away with that anymore. Let us now expand and say, listen, we know the government is failing. We've broken it down. It seems like there's no other option right now other than to say, listen, there needs to be a total exodus out of that system, which it can't happen overnight.
That sounds great.
No, I know it can't happen overnight, and it's unrealistic, right? Like I said, there's always trade-offs. One of the things that, you know, there's always trade-offs, and Thomas Sowell always, you know, talks about that. I love Thomas Sowell. You know, he talks about there's trade-offs. So nothing is going to be absolute. So when you look at the charter school system or the public-private partnerships, I mean, you have cases of cronyism also. You know, we could talk about the cronyism and the traditional schools. There's going to be cronyism, like Elvin was talking about, in the charter schools. There's going to be, you know, these same problems are going to exist. But I feel like, you know, at this point, more options need to be on our table for our children and the parents to say, listen, I want to choose this school because A, B, C, D, E versus my child is stuck.
I don't mind school choice. I don't mind school choice at all. What I don't like is building new schools for them to choose. If it was, we still have the schools are Burke, North Charleston, Stall, and Wando. All right, cool. So we have those 4 schools. We're gonna let's put Garrett because Garrett was there, right? Okay. We have those 5 schools. They get to pick from those 5 schools. What I don't like is let's build school 6 and school 7 and school 8, make those schools much better than the other 5 schools, and then say, oh, now choose.
Well, they gotta build better.
No,
but they're going to have to build better. That's what competition brings about. That's what competition is bringing about. They have to build better. There's no other option.
No, you can't. No, you can't build 3, 6, 7, and 8 and compare them to the first 5 when they have more resources. Think about this: Community Resource Center, right? Y'all do an amazing job, and I always applaud y'all. Shout out to you, Mr. Lewis. Miss Ethel, the whole team. I love y'all. Y'all know y'all know how I feel about y'all. I don't got to go into that. But imagine they say, okay, cool. Community Resource Center, y'all got the resources that y'all need, but we want to serve more people. Instead of saying, let's give the money to the Community Resource Center because they're making it work with what they got. They have limited resources. Imagine instead of, we're gonna instead of so now they're like, okay, cool, we've given them what they need, and now we want to serve more people. So the way we're gonna serve more people is right next to the Community Resource Center. We're gonna invest $5 million into a building, fully paid staff, benefits, right next to the Community Resource Center. And they're gonna do what y'all do times 5. Is the Community Resource Center now a less effective place?
Okay, so
no.
This is I like that analogy. This is the thing: the Community Resource Center was built because of a lack of resources
in the community
in a particular area.
Right.
So we decided between me, Lewis, Teddy Pryor, we sat down and we said, how can we take our services in an area that is a food desert, underserved, poor, limited resources? What can we do? How can we use our creative minds to come in and create a model of success that is going to benefit those in that community? So I think it serves a purpose in being able to compete. So now what we've done is if somebody else, for anybody to compete. So now this is the thing. So now this is the thing. Because we're in a particular area, I'm figuring and I'm guessing that somebody else will eventually come in the same area with the idea and continue to build on that model because we've been successful. So what we have to do is we have to stay competitive ourselves. Right. So we got to stay competitive because we know that, hey, we don't have a monopoly in this area. So we got to come up with new ideas. We got to partner with more people. We got to continue to keep our creative juices flowing because in the blink of an eye, you got a Metanoia and Bill Stanfield who has way more money than us. You have Lampsey who has way more money than us.
But they don't operate in your sector. But they don't operate in your sector. They don't operate in your sector. That's the difference. Right.
Well, at any time they can. So the thing is,
they wouldn't, and I'll tell you why they wouldn't.
Why do you think so?
Shout out to Mr. Bill Stanfield, Metanoia, and all of them.
Yeah, shout out.
They wouldn't simply because of the fact that there's no money in there for them.
Oh, it's money in there.
No, not.
It's money in there now.
There's levels though, right? There's levels.
Right.
The levels of money that y'all are getting, they get that already.
Yeah. They get millions.
They spend that on.
Yeah, they spend millions in the bank. Yeah, they have millions in the bank.
Yeah, they pass off 10 million.
Yeah.
So then they're not going to operate in the second. And this is not, any shade to them because again, like I said, shout out to Mr. Bill, shout out to the whole man.
No shade.
But they're not. Y'all operate in the 100,000 realm. They probably write 1 or 2 grants and get that.
Yeah, easily.
Y'all for the money that y'all get, y'all gotta hustle. You gotta work 50-hour weeks for that, bruh. With no staff.
Yeah.
Fam, come on, man.
Yeah.
They wouldn't do what y'all do because the money that for them to move, it would have to be on the level that it already is. It's like Low Country Youth Services, right? Right now, almost every opportunity sounds like a really good opportunity as long as it brings in money because it allows us to do the thing that we want to do. But once we get to the place that our organization is bringing in $2 million, our budget, our annual budget is $2 million a year. You think I'm gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna have a coat drive if it's not already? No. Then we have a food drive if it's not already my programming. No. If you tell me, oh, we can bring in an additional $2 million, we're providing food to families. Oh, we already got $2 million. That matches what we have. Oh yeah, do that. Yeah. Food drives for everybody. But for y'all, that's the move. So the only way somebody can come into y'all's space is if if they're coming in with a David Tepper. Now I want you to imagine David Tepper decides there needs to be food giveaways, and David Tepper puts $5 million into a building right across the street from your building, fully funded, all staff taken care of for it. They take care of the training, benefits. Shoot, your volunteer is about to leave you and go over there.
But you know what? You know what? At the end of the day, that's going to build a community. So even if I got drowned out in the process, still
mission
that level of competition benefited the community. Even if I had to take a back seat and say, you know what, whoa, Lewis, man, they built a $10 million building over here, and they just got everything. But still, at the end of the day, it benefits the community. So even though I might say, doggone it, it's still a win-win for the people in the area, because just say next week they build a grocery store. We have the long lines, of course, because hey, there's no grocery store within miles. So now they build a grocery store. Guess what? Now it's like, oh, they built a grocery store. So we have to it still forces us to never get into a comfort zone and to always think, strategize, partner. Strategize, partner.
My point is that you can't compare the results. I couldn't compare the results of something that happened at your community resource center that's something where the vast majority of your staff is, I'd imagine, volunteer to a place that's fully staffed. I think about everything through the lens of mentorship. For those who don't know, everything I think about is through the lens of mentorship and through nonprofit sector and how it serves Black kids in the mentor capacity. That's something I talk about a lot because of what I care about. Shout out to Low Country Youth Services, LYS-a-thon, March 20th. But so when we talk, when we talk, there's organizations that are heavily funded, like $1 million budgets, multi-million-dollar budgets that gets money that don't do half the work that my organization does. And then people look at us and they say, well, why don't you have this thing that this organization has? And I have to return to them that everybody in my organization has a job. We do more stuff. We're more quote unquote active than organizations that are fully funded.
Right.
But we also can't compare our results to those organizations because those organizations have staff. So things that we don't have time to do, like I don't have time to write grants. I don't have time to donor management. Something as simple as somebody gives us $100 and I, as the executive director, make a list of all these people and I can call them and say, thank you for giving us $100. Your $100 made a difference. There are organizations that have people on staff that just do that. So to be able to compare our donor management, people are like, oh, well, you should do a better job of all these different things. Stewardship. These are all things that you have an opportunity to do to better the services that you give. So when you have that higher level of funding, there's things that you have more time for. So again, back to the schools argument, we bring these institutions in with higher levels of funding, high levels of resources, high levels of capacity, smaller class sizes, the ability to kick kids out anytime you want to, the ability to adjust your curriculum as you see fit, the ability to bypass certain standardized testing abilities. And then you say, well, North Charleston High School, why aren't you doing that? Because we can't.
And that's the part I agree with. If they're so Anthony, that's brother. Me and Anthony are always debating, healthy debate.
What up, Anthony?
Anthony said, "Do you really want the market controlling our kids' education?" I would rather the market dictate our children's education versus the government controlling our kids' education. The only reason I'm saying that, once again, because the government as a monopoly has no pressure on them to perform. There's no pressure. The schools that are failing can continue to fail. There's no pressure, and it becomes the norm. And psychologically, parents say, hey, this is our only option. When the market comes in and people have fresh ideas and ways that they can feel they can reach out to parents and teach, I think that that's a good thing. But like I said, like Rajon said, there's a lot of cronyism involved. There's, so each process really has to be looked at.
Also, when it goes bad, it goes really bad in charter schools. I'll give you an example. Prestige Academy. That I think that without, because I don't want it to sound like I'm bashing anybody or nothing like that. But when it goes bad, it goes really bad. When you have kids that come to school because, oh, this is going to be this environment. This is a charter school. This is, going back to, your idea about, to giving the money, right? Imagine parents taking their money to that school and there not being a bus to pick the kids up, not being meals consistently, being teachers sticking around for the full year, not being like that stuff is allowed to happen because there is that lack of oversight from the school board. Right. And then they have to go to the school board and say, oh, we need your resources to make this happen. We were leaning on the community. We were leaning on these resources to come through, and they never came through. And that school was left high and dry. And those kids, I'd love to see a study of the kids that went through that school while it was open and where they are now. Because I promise you, their test scores will not indicate what those kids' potentials were. Right. Heading into that first year. So that's my other part about it, because it's, like I said, it's only 16% of the number that I saw again in the New York Times article that I read today. I'll send it to you because I got it from Emily Cruz. Shout out to Emily Cruz from Be a Mentor. She's mad dope. Only 16% of charter schools showed effectiveness over public schools. So are there charter schools that are more effective than public schools? Sure. Are there public schools that are more effective than charter schools?
Yes.
Definitely. Are there situations where I think the thing also said that like charter schools are better are for the kids that have been able to get into charter schools, it's been really good. The problem is that for the kids that are not able to get into the school, they're stuck in schools that are full of kids that couldn't get into charter schools. Right.
And I think that's where we got to maintain, where we got to kind of like find our balance at when we really start trying to look at it, circumspectively all across the board. Like how do we maintain healthy competition? And those schools, our traditional schools, need to be in the conversation of competition also. Like they don't just need to be a refugee camp. I mean, they don't just need to be like a way center. They need to be like a refugee camp where people flock into them too. Like, hey man, I love this school. But I think, and you can attest to this better than me because you've actually had knowledge in going in the situation, until some sort of controls are lifted from the top of the bureaucracy and more schools are given autonomy, I think that's the only way traditional schools are going to become more attractive to a lot of parents. Because and this is the thing, right? Like there's several. I know it's not always about money. It's about the environment. And I know I think I've heard you say this several times too. If you could create a positive environment within that framework and you can have more ability to, make adjustments and more autonomy, I think traditional schools would bust back. So what do you think? What do you think we need to do? And what kind of message? And I know this is kind of like oft repeated and it's kind of like the cause of frustration with a lot of educators and parents. How can we break that? How can we break that chain that's holding teachers back and educators from being able to have more autonomy and new ideas in teaching methods?
So a lot of people like to say, that, throwing more money at the problem won't solve the problem. Mm-hmm. I think this is one of those situations where throwing more money at the problem is definitely going to be not a total solution for the problem, but it's going to be a part of the solution for the problem. Teachers are massively underpaid. And I want to talk about it from this standpoint here. And when the public school system was created, as we currently know it, for those who don't know, the public school system as we currently know it was really instituted like in the 1920s, like the one that we know now with like social studies and history and all of that stuff. It was a man by the name of Dewey, and they got like the Dewey Decimal System and all of that. Mm-hmm. So Dewey had this idea that all Americans should know so there's like 5,000 facts that all Americans should know. And that's literally what the social studies curriculum was built around. Like it's this guy is that impactful when you talk about schools. The thing that the public school system was designed to do is no longer what the school is not the primary focus of what the school is now.
Mm-hmm.
The school system was designed originally to create people that could go into the workforce and be decent Americans. Like that's what it was about. The school system that we know, not like the European system that they had before. Because if you look at it, if you want to talk about wage gap, look at European countries. But that's another issue for another day. The school system in U.S., as we know it, was created around the 1920s, and don't quote me on the exact date, but it created these people, some people, in the farms and all of that. So, you had like the schoolhouse, you go to the schoolhouse and you learn a couple of things. Like it wasn't what it is now. So now, as opposed to just being about you going into the workforce, school teachers also expected to make sure you eat. When the public school system was created, there was no food. I actually just recently learned that like the idea of public lunch, like school lunch, wasn't instituted in like the early 80s. Shout out to the Black Panther Party, by the way. Because the free lunch and free breakfast program. Yeah, okay. Just in case people didn't know what, because everybody's talking about Fred Hampton, but they don't realize. Anyway, all right. So like that program wasn't instituted until the early 1980s. Before that, there was no public school, so there was no understanding that schools would have to be able to feed people. Schools are also required now to make sure that people have mental health needs met. Mm-hmm. Expectation in 1920 when they were creating this program. So the way people think about teachers, the things that people think, oh, they just go in and they teach math all day long, and that's all they do. And they walk in, and students come in, and they're ready, and they sit down at their desk, and then they come to the board and they say, hello, kids, we're going to learn about math today. And they say, thank you, teacher. We're so happy that you're here. And then, no. There's a lot more to it than is that. So with that being said, the pay scale that teachers were paid, were they considered was a good wage long time ago when they were like, okay, cool, this certain percentage lines up with where teachers are, and then you look at the rate of inflation, and we're going to go up at the rate of inflation. The rate of teacher pay has not even gone up at the rate of inflation. It's going up lower than that. So when you have salaries that don't even rise to the rate of inflation, you can get outpriced really quickly to the point where teachers, they're like, oh, teachers, teachers, another misnomer. I'm sorry, I'm ranting now, so just tell me.
No, go ahead.
Teachers, people talk about the fact, oh, well, I wish I could get 3 months off in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
You get 3 months off in the summer? No, you know what teachers get? So teachers get their same paycheck, right? So if you're thinking that teachers get their paycheck for 9 months and then they have 3 months that they're just getting paid, no, teachers get their 9 months of work spread out over a year.
Mm.
If teachers were only getting paid for the months that they worked, right? Those 9 months, teachers be paid pretty well. But then they have 3 more months that they can make more money. Mm-hmm. But no, they factor it into that full year. So you spread that out. That's why you have teachers working in the summer. That's why you have teachers working full-time jobs, separate jobs. That's why you have teachers who have to tutor part-time. You have teachers that have to do a lot of stuff just to make ends meet. I think a starting teacher makes like, what, $30,000 a year, something like that, $35,000 a year. Like, that's nothing compared to what that education cost them.
Right.
Teachers are the lowest paid 4-year profession of all of them.
Thing, right? So I'm going to cite another government failure, right? So with the charter or the private-public partnerships, they can set their own rate of salary to pay teachers. They can pay. So they can say, okay, we're going to start our teachers off more than what the government is paying their teachers. I mean, it's the autonomy, but the autonomy is attractive. And I think that's where, again, we're citing a lot of the failures of government-run schools, and these other models that we have accessible are able to make them say, you got to pay your teachers more, because if you don't, we're going to attract the best and the brightest. So and in the spirit of having to compete, they're going to have to do it, or guess what? You're gone. But so I understand. Go ahead.
What I would like to see happen, because I got on a little rant. Sorry. So what I would like to see happen in the blue sector is when they have these bright ideas for these great schools, use them within the schools that exist. Right? They have the Septima Clark Academy. Right? Septima Clark Academy is on what campus?
They moved to James. I think James Island, didn't they?
Where was it originally?
North Charleston.
North Charleston High School. North Charleston High School. School of the Arts is started out where? a mile from North Charleston High School.
Okay.
This academic magnet started out in Burke campus. Where's it now? A mile from North Charleston High School.
Mm-hmm.
So you put all these resources in North Charleston, and you couldn't find a way to put any of the money into North Charleston High School except to take away outside. Park Circle is a blossoming metropolis of new homes and new businesses. Right?
There's a question for you.
I see Emily. What's up, Emily? And she's the one who sent me the article. So shout out to Emily. She said, when education first started, there were males in the classroom. Do you think wage and respect may have been different for that reason? Do you think there would have been a higher wage if there was a male-dominated field? I think that's a great point, Emily. And I think that you might actually be onto something. I've never thought about it from that standpoint. I do know that a lot of males walk away from teaching for that very reason. The fact that, you can go to a different sector and make more money doing other things and be more appreciated and feel more relevant and feel more, loved not from the kids, because the kids always going to give you love because kids are kids and kids are loving people. But from the larger society, I mean, a lot of teachers receive a lot of backlash for stuff that really aren't teachers' faults. And that's something that we have to have a discussion about if we're going to talk about why people are leaving the profession of teaching. Teachers feel unappreciated. It's bad enough you're not going to pay me well. Okay, cool. You're not going to pay me well. At least appreciate me.
Yeah. Now, Emily, you did bring up a good point.
I think she's right, by the way.
Yeah. She did bring up, and that's very, very possible. But like I said, I really don't know when education started. The numbers of males in the schools or things of that nature. But you would know that better than me. You probably looked into that. I haven't looked at gender, percentage of genders as far as teachers when education first started. So that could be it. But then you have other states who pay their teachers more.
Yeah.
So
but they also don't have more male teachers though.
They also don't, right?
No, they don't.
Yeah. So it could be. I don't know. It's South Carolina, right? I think. I don't know, man. It's a lot of that because every individual state is run. I mean, every school is governed by a state.
That's a state decision.
Yeah, it's a state decision. So the federal
state obligations.
Right. So the federal government is supposed to technically stay out of states' business when it comes to operating schools like that. So
yeah. That's why the Department of Education is such an interesting thing.
Yes, exactly. So I don't know, Emily, that's good, but I just feel like there has to be a last ditch effort, and I don't think school choice is going away. I think it's good. Go ahead.
No, so I just wanted while we're talking about since you brought up the point about male teachers, I want to talk about this idea of men in the classroom and why men leave the classroom, because it's a really interesting thing. People love to throw the idea out there, we need more men in the classroom, but until teaching becomes more masculine in nature, men will always walk away from the classroom. And that's not a shot or a shade to anyone. Teaching is probably one of the most female dominated.
Explain that. I'm lost on that. You got me scratching my bald head on that.
All right, so I'll give you something simple, right?
Okay.
I'll give you something simple. Trying to say, you got to say things, and me, I try to say things in a way one that people can receive, and two, that's not disrespectful to anybody or anything. Right. I'll go like this. School has decided they want to get gifts for all the teachers.
Okay.
How much masculine stuff do you think they're going to bring in?
None. Probably very little.
I can put it this way. Every single gift I've ever gotten as a teacher, almost from the school, not from students, because students know me and they know how I get down. But almost every single gift I've ever gotten as a teacher, I've given to my wife. Like, yo, babe, they gave us some stuff today. Here you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no... Sam, I don't know if Sam's still watching. I know Sam was watching. Yeah. But Sam talks about the fact that, like, when you want to attract a certain type of person, certain type of demographic to what you do organizationally, you have to market to that individual. So when Republicans wanted to market to Hispanics, you started seeing commercials that were in Spanish, right? Because they're like, oh, we want to get with the Hispanics. We want to bring them in, we want them to vote for us. So you started seeing commercials in Spanish. You started seeing Spanish representatives popping up. But when they're marketing to males, they just it's like, yo, we're gonna give y'all some money. We're gonna give y'all a free education. But we're not gonna look at an institution of education and how it's delivered and why that's not attractive to men to stick around to. Because I promise you this, in the classroom, when I closed my door in my classroom, I never felt more loved than that. I never, ever felt more loved than I did when I was in my classroom with my students. Only thing that compares is when I'm mentoring my boys. That's it. I've never felt more love, well, except for my own personal kids, but I mean outside of my family. Like, you will never be more loved as an individual than as a man in a classroom full of children. It's just different. The problem is that everything else that's associated with education is not very manly. And that again, I say that manly in terms of Rajan's view of manliness. I'll make sure I put all my precursors out there. Not offensive, trying not to be offensive to anybody of any different walk of life or any gender. I'm very respectful to all women, and I love the fact that it's such a the women that do run education. I mean, you look at most principals. Now, another thing about this. Oh, okay, I'm cooking. Okay.
Okay, cook. Let me hear what you got. Let me hear what you got.
The other thing about it, when you are, especially the black male teacher, guess what you automatically become in the school?
The face, probably.
No,
like,
you're the disciplinarian. You're the disciplinarian.
Okay.
I'm going to send you all the bad kids because you know how to deal with them. How do you know how to deal with them? How do you know that I know? How do you know that I want to deal with them? If there are any black males who have been in education, tell me I'm lying. Tell me you didn't become the person that Lil Jamal's acting up. I'm gonna send him to Mr. Jones.
Yeah.
If you have two administrators, one is a white female, one is a black male, who you think they're sending the kids to act up?
Yep, you.
And if there's no black males,
but do you think that's why we need more? So this is and this is another reason why I think having these having school choice and having choice schools works in our advantage. They have more autonomy over the hiring process.
Yes. So
you can hire you can see with the school.
No, you nailed it. So Media Street Academy. I'll give you a perfect example.
Okay.
When I decided to leave the classroom, they were like, yo, come check us out, And they were like, yo, listen, one, they are very strategic in their hiring of black men. There are several Call Me Mr. graduates that are now working at Media Street Academy, and I know exactly why. They will let you come in and say, okay, cool. Well, you can only come in on these days. All right, cool. We'll come in on these days, and we want you to you'll be a behavior management specialist. I got a homeboy, graduated from college in Charleston, just like me. That's what he does. Homeboy goes and he plays with the kids, he kicks it with the kids, and he DJs their little parties. And they do that. So those ideas, like you said, I think to your point, I think that and I also want to say this, right? I'm not saying that 100% of what you're saying is wrong. I think that anytime we have this argument that like this thing's great, this thing's evil, right? That this thing's great, this thing's evil. We don't have to demonize one to uplift the other. There's good things in charter schools. There's good things in what's happening there. What I'm saying is let's not take away from the schools that exist to uplift this one. Let's look at this one and say, okay, cool. I like that idea. How do we implement that here? We have a school of the arts where we just send kids who are really talented. which did what to our in-school arts programs? Our public school arts programs, what happened to those? Do you remember what band competitions were like when we were in high school?
Off the chain.
I go to band concerts. I go to chorus concerts now. I hate going to chorus concerts. And I was a geek. I was a chorus nerd. There was nothing that I loved more than singing in chorus coming up. I have to go to my kids' chorus concerts. I love my children. Shout out to y'all if y'all listening. I hate it. I hate it so much. But I went to that I loved. You know where it was? Rawlings School of the Arts. Rawlings School of the Arts gave me one of the most amazing chorus concerts I've seen since I became a parent. But guess where that program would have been back in 1994 when I went to Brentwood Middle School, when I was in middle school? That would have been at Brentwood Middle School. Right. What people call one of the worst schools in the state had the best chorus in the state.
So let me ask you this
Middle School.
So because these concepts of a lot of the concepts of education that we're talking about aren't new. The traditional public school system basically hasn't maybe used them as much as they could have, and they didn't utilize the resources in manners that would maximize the performance of the school. Why is it that we would have to look at private public partnerships or charter schools or any sort of choice school in order to build an idea of a curriculum when most of these educators have been working inside of traditional public schools but have been handicapped by government bureaucrats? All of these people have came out of public schools. A lot of these educators, when they come and they say, want to build these private partners, they're going to say, hey, man, I taught at, I used to be a principal at such and such school. They have these long resumes. Why is it that we have to wait? Why is it now we have to wait to look at them and say, hey, let's copy this model when they came, it's like they came from this same pool of people that they could have been doing that in the public school.
I think that speaks to the problem that you were mentioning earlier, is that there's a lack of a willingness to be creative. I'll give you an example.
Okay, here, answer this because you former DD2.
DD2. All right, the cost per student in Charleston County is double the cost per student in DD2, yet DD2 continuously does more with less. More money does not equal better results. All right, cool. So the cost per student in Charleston County is double the cost per student in DD2. Now, I'd actually need to see those numbers because, one, DD2 is a much smaller school district than Charleston County. So if you're telling me that they're spending double the amount of money per student than Charleston County, and they have Charleston County has spending double the amount of money, and they have way more students. I need to see those numbers. I don't know about those numbers. And I'm not saying that you're lying. I just need to see them. So I can't comment on something that I don't know. Now what I will say about DD2 is this: DD2 runs a tight ship. DD2, you're not gonna see a lot of the stuff that you see people doing in Charleston County School District when it comes to running after the school board and making everything like about the school board and the superintendent. No, superintendent in DD2, he don't play them games. Joe Pye is an institution. Understand this. Shoot, Joe Pye don't even got a PhD. He don't got a PhD, but he is the truth, bro. He's the truth. When he steps into a school and he says this needs to happen in this school, it happens. And I can't say I don't know much about Miss Postlethwaite, Superintendent Postlethwaite, Dr. Postlethwaite, but I know that she's walked through North Charleston several times. I know that I know that the moves that I've seen made have not been ones that I think is going to benefit North Charleston. I think that they've been trying to bleed North Charleston dry for a while. I think they've been trying to bleed North Charleston out for a long time, and I think that they're just waiting for North Charleston to throw up the white flag where they can shut the school down. And so they can use that $40 million facility for the people who live there now. Right.
So Frank basically on the screen, Frank basically said how, I felt when we first started the conversation. As far as flexibility is what's making charter schools more attractive and successful, and bureaucracy is stifling growth in our education system. So let me ask you this: as an advocate of I would say both models because, we, like I said, we understand there's trade-offs, right? So
yeah, for sure,
we understand that, everything has trade-offs. Nothing is absolute.
Yeah.
How do you feel? Do you feel that we should stop the private public partnerships and the charters? Should we put a stop on them, or a moratorium, a stop on them, and figure out how we can make all these traditional schools better? Better. And
what I think is we should make all schools play by the same rules, so we can fairly judge success. Which goes back to my original point that I made when I came on, is that we don't even know how we're judging success. Like we don't have metrics for that. When we say more successful, what does more successful mean? Right? Does that mean less people are dropping out? Because if I'm a charter school and I get to kick kids out, if I get to kick out all the kids that causing trouble, yeah, I'm more successful. Right? But I think having to kick a kid out of a school is a measure of unsuccess. I think that's a measure of failure. When your system is not well enough structured to be able to reach a kid that may be struggling in that way. You see what I'm saying? I think the fact that we can play by that, we bring these people in, it's like we're playing basketball. You and me, we go out on the court, you pick your 5, I pick my 5. Another team comes and they're ready to play, but they get to pick 7 people. And instead of having 1 basketball, they got 2 basketballs. So their team gets to use 2 basketballs and have 7 people. My team only gets to use 1 basketball with the original 5. Mm-hmm. Can we say that one team is better than the other?
How do you think the statement with CJ feel? How does this statement sit well with you?
Okay.
How does that statement sit with you?
The teacher pool is already dwindling year after year after year. If you think that preserving the teachers that exist and making life easier and better for the people who are currently doing the job is going to better the field of education, you are sadly mistaken.
Okay, repeat that again.
The teaching pool is already thin. Mm-hmm. If you think that it is not a big enough issue, like there should not be more attention paid to making teaching a more respected form of profession so that you can bring in more people. Because the amount of people that's even going through education's programs is dwindling, which means you're having a more and more shrinking level of teachers. So less teachers means less people to teach, which means larger classroom sizes. That's not a good thing. Teachers are being paid more competitively in private schools. Why is this anti-teacher? Because they have smaller class sizes as well. Numbers show that like class sizes, so schools are built a certain way for a specific reason, right? Now, why don't you think so? And don't you, okay, if we just wanted to have as many students in the classroom as we wanted to, couldn't they just build auditoriums and teachers teach in auditoriums in elementary school? Shakim, I'll ask you because I know he's on there. Don't you think they could? Elementary school, if they wanted to just fit students into a classroom, right? We're going to pay a teacher $1 million and we're going to put 500 students into this classroom for elementary school. How long do you think that lasts?
It's not going to last. So
why not? Why not?
Because at the end of the day, I mean, the student-teacher ratio is like absurd. So it really wouldn't work. It really wouldn't work.
No, but I'm saying, let's just dump money into the teacher. We realize we have a teacher shortage. So let's just give the teachers we got $1 million and dump 50 students into their classroom. I only say 500, 50 students into their classroom. We're going to put them, instead of in one classroom, we're going to combine 2 and 3 classrooms together to make sure there's enough seating space for social distancing and all of that. One teacher, we're going to pay them $1 million. They're going to teach 50 students at one time. Why don't they do that?
Well, it wouldn't work because still, I mean, you still the teacher-student ratio is still too high where you're not going to get the good results if you have so many children with so many issues running around and only one instructor.
So let's look at private schools and let's look at charter schools. Private school, my daughter went to, so I'm in a unique position. I have 5 children. One of my graduated from Pinewood Prep. One of my daughters graduated from Somerville High School. I'm about to have another Somerville High School grad. And then my other daughter went to Rollins School of the Arts. So I've literally experienced public school, private school, and charter schools, and magnet schools. I've experienced all 3, right? And my daughter, who's a junior, just came from Hannah High School. So I've also experienced public school in different school districts. I've also taught in 2 different school districts. So I'm coming at this from a multi-faceted approach. Trust me, I'm not just telling you something that I heard somebody say on a podcast one time. I promise.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right. So school size. I'll put it this way. When my daughter entered Pinewood Prep, her junior year, we did a walkthrough of the school. Those classrooms couldn't have fit more than 20 people in it. They couldn't. In a public school, I couldn't name a class that's going to have less than 20 students in it. I'm telling you, in this private school, max capacity, you get 20 students in there, which means that's guaranteed size cap. Guaranteed. Again, they're playing under different rule sets. So when you say something simple as,
isn't that a good thing, though? Isn't that a good thing? They
yeah. So let's build a public school. So let's try this. Let's build a public school the way they build private schools.
Right. So that all falls down to government bureaucracy and how they are allowing these things to they're allowed these problems to snowball. They haven't fixed them. So people are starting alternatives to where they say, listen, we know it's unhealthy for a class size to be greater than 20-1. So we won't allow it under any circumstances. Under any circumstances, we won't allow it because we will be sacrificing the child's education. So what we're going to do is make sure that we don't exceed this amount. And in the event that we do, we either bring in a TA or we're going to just hire another teacher. Hold on. CJ said he got some numbers for you.
I see him 19,000 per pupil and DD2 11,000 per pupil. Now you got to ask this question here because I love those kind of things. So what factors into what they pay per student? Because I bet you what they spend, what they do is, so the way they figure out cost per student, right? Cost per student is how much money does the school district have and how many students does the school district have, right?
Repeat that again.
How much student, if we have $200 million as a district, and then how many students do we have? You take that number, you divide it by the number of students, and that's the cost per pupil. Guess what they factor into that?
What's that?
Building new buildings. That's a cost that is budgeted into the school district. So when we're talking about things like building new buildings for students, right? They're spending more per pupil because they're using a lot of money for capital costs to build buildings. That doesn't mean that money is going directly to students.
Right. So operation costs are baked into that also, as far as even utilities, light, rent, janitorial expenses, upkeep,
right.
air conditioner.
So now when you build a new building, you got to hire new staff. You got to pay them. You got to pay people to maintain the school. Guess what? DD2 built 3 new schools. DD2 has what? How many schools now? We got.
So what CJ just said on here is more money is spent per student in Charleston, and DD2 gets better results.
But Charleston, we just talked about the fact that Charleston County also is building schools like out the union. Like you take that total budget and you split it down by the amount of.
Right.
Do you think a mini Hughes Elementary School? Do you think a Hot Gap Elementary School they spend more money than they are at Rawlings School of the Arts that just built a multi-million-dollar auditorium? No. They have less schools. You have less staff. You have less overhead. Come on, man. This ain't rocket science. But I understand the raw numbers. But remember, there's content, then there's context. They got to match. They got to marry. You can't just throw numbers out there and say, oh, maybe the new buildings reduce class size. No, it's not. No, it's not. Because they're not just reducing class size, they're removing the resources from the schools that already exist. Back to my point about North Charleston High School. We had way more stuff when I went there in 2001 than they do now in 2021. 20 years ago. They have less students. Class sizes are definitely smaller at North Charleston High School. They only have 300 students. They're trying to shut that school down. So what they're doing is, and I'm gonna use this point. Thank you for engaging, CJ, because I'm speaking very passionately, but I do appreciate the fact that you're engaging. So
absolutely.
North Charleston High School, right? When I went there, I don't know the exact number, somewhere between 12 and 1,400 students in that school total, right? 12 and 1,400 students in that school. That's the number that I remember in my head, right? Now, what we had was balance. I was talking to you earlier about, what's the difference between now and then, right? Balance. So I graduated from North Charleston High School in 2001, right? Now, I think I wanted to say my sophomore year, they built the School of the Arts. So that pulled our students that were gifted in like artistic, the singers, the band, the really good band kids, like those kids, even the writers, because School of the Arts is also writing, creative writing, theater, all those things. So that pulled those kids out, right? And numbers have shown, statistics have proven that children that are involved in the arts normally do really good in school. So those top level kids are now, instead of being at North Charleston High School, living in that area, they now go to School of the Arts. That top 1-2% of the students that were really, really smart, that were killing it on the SATs and the ACTs and all the standardized testing, they built academic magnet. Those school kids went there. Then let's take so now, of course, we're still good. We all right. Then they built military magnet school. And military magnet school started as a middle school and they expanded up into the high school. Guess what happened there? Well, those kids who had potential but just needed that extra push, guess where they went?
Academic magnet.
No, military magnet.
Oh, okay.
So you got 3 schools pulling the artistics kids, the geniuses, and the kids who have potential but just need an extra push. What do you have left at North Charleston High School?
So now this is the question. If the school district...
I would have been at... Hold on, one more point, I'm going to let you go.
Go ahead.
If I would have been in North Charleston during this time, I would have been at School of the Arts or Academic Magnet. There's no way Rajon Lewis ends up at North Charleston High School if I went to school right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm gonna bring CJ on. Hold on. Hey, I'm home now. If you want to bring me, all right. Let me.
Who that?
Come on,
CJ. Come on, through,
CJ's
CJ.
coming.
Pull up.
Click the link, CJ. Check your inbox. check your inbox, CJ.
I agree with you, Michael David, by the way. North Charleston maybe has 2 years. I actually predict within 2 years they're going to shut North Charleston High School down. And then it's going to open back up. And I said this on my show Thursday night. Within 2 years, they're going to shut it down. Right? And then 2 to 3 years later, they're going to open it back up. And it's going to be a state-of-the-art facility that's tied to that $40 million facility that they tore down our football stadium to build.
Right. CJ, come on in. CJ says, so those kids have better options than the failing school. Good for them. So he's saying now,
No, they don't. Because they can't get into Academic Magnet. And they can't get into the School of the Arts. And they can't get into Military Magnet because they capped their student body. They don't have better options. Oh, you want them to get bused to Wando? You want them to take a 50-minute bus ride to Wando? Is that the better option?
Right. So hence here's the trade-off part of it. Here's the trade-off, right? Like I said, that it's so many trade-offs. You're gonna have potential students that are stuck. Everybody's not gonna make it. So here's the argument that is against it. So here you have a situation where you're saying, okay, more autonomy, more flexibility, more ability to pay teachers. Okay, bingo.
He coming
What's
in?
up, guys?
Bingo. CJ.
How's it going?
Then you got on the green. Then you got on the green wave hoodie. Then you got on the green wave hoodie coming in. Okay.
Hey. Thanks for having me on, guys. I've been loving this discussion.
What's up, man?
All right, CJ. So let's talk about your take on privatization and what it brings to the table, some of the benefits, and do you think the benefits outweigh? Let's do like a cost benefit analysis. How do you think the just kind of give us your take on that? I'm gonna go get some water real quick.
Okay. Well, the premise is when parents and kids have more choice and when they have more options available, they're gonna be more likely to succeed than if they only had one choice. That's the simple premise, right? And so there's a lot of examples that you've brought up of situations that I'm gonna be straightforward. I'm not familiar with each one of these specific examples you brought up, and I'd love to hear any things you have. A lot of it is cronyism. A lot of times. With the public-private partnership, there's a lot of bribery behind the scenes between private schools. So I'm not here to say all private schools are good. But what I can say is that I'm a big defender of the free market. And when there is a true free market choice, like, for example, I watched a little bit of your podcast. I watched about half of it. And then one lady was like, why would anybody ever advocate for private schools? And I was like, have they never heard of some of these amazing success stories? Like out of Washington, D.C., their whole entire school choice revamped and took, completely turned around. So, it's a lot more of a nuanced discussion than a lot of those people were making it out to be. And I'd love to discuss those nuances, man.
Yeah. I think, but that's the point that I made, during that show even, is that I do think that there are definitely counterpoints to be made. It's just that you have to look at, you have to be willing to hear them. And a lot of times, and I think that a lot of these conversations I had in silos, I think that a lot of times that, instead of
echo chambers,
right? Yeah. I used I was on my homegirl Kim Bowman's show the other day, and I was talking about the fact that like social media has created this world where not only is dissenting thought frowned upon, but it's literally like not accepted at all. And so it creates these echo chambers where people think that everybody agrees with them. And that's not the case anywhere across the board. Like there isn't. The truth is always somewhere in the middle. The facts are always somewhere in the middle.
And you know what?
But we don't
agree.
search the middle.
And I think that, right, I agree. And I think that there's a lot of reactionaryism going on, man, in culture. I think there's a lot of hyperbole and a lot of buzzwords when we could literally look at the numbers. Like I pulled the numbers up. This is a .gov source. I wasn't trying to like be funny with the numbers. And so my main point, like, you can't really get the context from what I was saying in the chat, but my main point was what you were saying. Like Joe Pye runs a tight ship with less per student. So I understood your argument. You were saying that, maybe the new building costs, I would say there's just as much new building cost in public schools in DD2, maybe not as much, but when you're talking about cost per pupil, over the last 2 decades, DD2 has consistently outperformed Charleston school districts test scores wise, and they've had half the amount per student. So it's like, okay, maybe the past couple years, you're right. Like I'll see that point, but like overall, more money. Like I went to school in Chicago. I did a lot of work in the communities in Chicago, and they always just try to dump more money in these schools when sometimes it's a little bit of competition that can light that spark and inspire the teachers rather than these tenured teachers who will make mistakes, and then these teacher unions will protect them. They'll stay in their jobs. We don't have teachers unions here, of course, but I think there's a lot of fear mongering among the SC for Ed people about school choice. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about the privatization. I'll shut up here in a minute, but my main overarching point is that competition traditionally in any aspect of life that you look for helps people rise to the top. Competition helps men improve and become the best versions of themselves. So that's the premise.
Yeah. So I agree that competition does. I think competition should be fair and equal. I don't think you can include competition and then say, well, you only have to compete in these certain areas, and these other areas we're just gonna let you do whatever you want, and then we're gonna judge you the same. Back to my point about that I made about a basketball, right? We're playing basketball. You and me playing basketball. You got your 5, I got my 5. These next guys have next, and not only do they get to pick two additional players, they also get to have an extra ball. That's not. So
you're saying it's an unfair level. It's not a level playing field.
It's not a level playing field.
And I think that that's a fair argument, because I think that if you really looked at it, there's probably a lot of politicians that are being bribed by local private schools. So I'm not saying that that's not true, but what I am saying is not every situation is an unlevel playing field. So when you're talking about the private school that you just gave the example. Can we go back to your example of North Charleston High School? What happened to those kids? They were going to different schools. Isn't it a good thing that parents have more than one option to choose from? Is that not a good thing?
I don't think
less people are in the failing school.
I don't think because when I was there, it wasn't a failing school. That's the problem.
Okay.
It became a failing school because you pulled those students out. That was the point that I was making. If you pull out, so let's say your class average your student average on the SAT is 1,100, right? 1,100 student average. Well, when I pull out all of the kids who were really smart, creative arts.
I see your point.
What happens to that average?
So you're saying the cream of the top, the smartest kids, you ended up.
Kids out. Yeah, you pull those kids out. Now what do you have?
So follow me here. I understand what you're saying. So what you're saying is, man, it seems like some of these kids and these competitive school systems, yes, maybe the smart kids are getting the better opportunities at the academic magnet school, but a lot of the kids that maybe aren't as talented aren't getting those same opportunities. I say, let's not leave them in a failing public school. Let's try to create opportunities and options for those kids too. And if we had more choice and less government involvement, in my opinion, then those opportunities would be available. It would be easier to start a business, to start a new school, and give people more options. And the more options there are, the lower the cost is going to be, and the better the product is going to be for the consumer. Right now, we have a monopoly in education in DD2. Right now, if you don't like the product you're getting from DD2, you can't take your business elsewhere because there's no charter schools here. You guys have options. There's no options here. And so a lot of times, like, we forget that I say the word consumer, but like, we forget that these kids are the first and foremost. We should be talking about getting the best results possible, regardless of the name of the school. And so if these academic magnet high schools are doing great, they're taking the cream of the crop in North Charleston High School, then I say, let's keep creating opportunities for maybe the C kids, maybe the D kids. And it is profitable if there's enough competition, if there's enough choice to create opportunities for those kids. They've done it in other places.
All right, so I'm gonna do this then. I'm gonna put it in different terms.
Please.
You have a basketball team. You have a basketball league, right? Now, you decide, I want to create an expansion team, right? The NBA decides they want to create an expansion team. Now, the expansion team says, we're going to take LeBron, KD,
they're stacking
Devin
the team.
Booker. So now, and now we want you to compete with the team that we just built over here.
Yep.
There's not another LeBron. There's not another.
The other school teams are going to lose. The other public schools are going to lose. Yeah.
So my point is that you're creating failing schools.
No, we're getting rid of the. We're getting rid of it. It would be getting rid of. So what I'm advocating for is breaking up the monopoly that is public schools. And so yes, there are resources that will be taken from public schools, and those resources will follow the kid to the choice of whatever school is best fit for them. So I'm less worried about teachers losing their jobs. I'm more worried about the child getting the best possible outcome. And so that sounds insensitive, but what where I'm going with this is that, for example, the numbers for Charleston I can give you, it was 19,000. What I'm talking about is there's a monopoly, and monopoly is where you only have one place that you can choose to do business, right? So there's one school in your zip code, you have no choice. Right. And so if you had a choice, you would be able, like, for example, a lot of parents did the homeschooling thing, and they're still paying for the brick and mortar school in their property taxes. Right. In other states and other parts, that $19,000 per pupil is going to follow the kid wherever they go. If the kid wants to be homeschooled, which is a huge, huge thing right now, it's blowing up. Homeschooling's bigger now than it's ever been because of the pandemic. Then that 19,000 stays with the family to help homeschool the family, make sure that the family has the resources. That's the kind of choice that I'm talking about. I'm not talking about defunding. Go ahead. Sorry.
What state has implemented that? I'm interested in that.
So I can send you various things, but the best thing that I would love to send some case studies on you is the Washington, D.C. model. But there's not been a whole lot of just like what I would call a full school choice. A lot of times cronyism does get involved, and that's why it's important for conversations like this to be happening, because if there are Republicans that are being crony, I want to stand right next to you and call them out if there's special interest dollars flowing in. And I know that that's the case.
Yeah, or independents or Green Party. Like, it don't matter. And I think a lot of times, you know, especially in the last 5-6 years, we've seen everything devolve into you're a Democrat, you're a Republican, and that's all.
Tribalism.
It's not. I think it's the complete wrong way for our country to go. And if we ever are going to heal and become what we actually have the potential to be, so I try to stay away from that aspect completely. But I understand what you're saying. I think that what has to happen is we have to be willing to come into a space, much like we are right now, and hear some stuff that we may disagree with, but still have a respectful conversation about the thing. And because everything is demonization of the other thing, we see it everywhere. You know, it's like nobody's like, yo, I really love the NBA, so the NFL must suck.
Right. I always say to my mom, two things can be true. I say to my mom, two things can be true at once. I say Trump can be this person who has a lot of bad rhetoric at times, but you know, he did bring forth a good economy. Two things can be true at once. You don't have to deny facts because the people in your tribe are doing that. And so, yeah, I'm a big fan, you know, of disavowing tribalism for sure, man. I think when you have substantive conversations around data, that's when progress happens.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I absolutely agree with your point about the fact that DD2 runs a tight ship. But if you also look like nobody's trying to build charter schools in DD2, why?
Well, they want to keep their monopoly. That's the short answer. Every time that a charter school,
nothing to stop them.
Well, the superintendent, right? And so there's a lot of cronyism in DD2 with, you know, building contracts, and they want to keep the building contracts between certain families that I won't go into. But we can look at Berkeley County, and they just built a charter school in 2019, and it's done so well that they're building another one right now that's going to be open in this summer. And you know, what's that?
Which school did Berkeley County build?
I cannot tell you the name of it. I know that a lot of the state. I know Celeste Davis is like a board member. Josh Whitley's like a board member. But it's a really successful school. I can send you some numbers that I've looked at there. But it's done such a good job that they're building a second one, and the cost. I don't want to go too deep into this because I don't have the exact numbers like I do the DD2, but maybe we'll do something more prepared. But the cost has been a lot lower because Berkeley's exploding with growth too. They're looking at ways to build schools without having to do these massive bond referendums. That's what DD2 does. DD2, their results are great, but they're third highest in debt. Dorchester County is the third highest indebted county in South Carolina because of these bond referendums, which is just a delayed tax increase. These tax increase hurt the low income neighborhood. So Berkeley County is looking, hey, how can we get lower cost, better results with charter schools? And that's why they're building another one right now. I'll get the information to you about it.
Another thing that people don't know about DD2 is that DD2 does not use the tax money does not go to the schools. Like the housing tax money does not go to the schools in DD2. That's another thing that people really don't understand or know about it. So when you say they're really operating, DD2 operates on a shoestring budget in a lot of ways. They really, really do. But like I said, the superintendent, Mr. Pai, runs a really, really tight ship. There's respect from the top down, and it's not a whole lot of stuff. Like even to get a job in DD2, like I remember when I got a job here, people were like, you got a job in DD2? Like,
right. It's prestigious, man. They do a good job. And that just goes to show you don't need more money to do a good job and to manage things, efficiently.
Teachers need support.
I don't disagree with that. I think you can two things can be true at once. You were talking earlier, like you were getting really passionate, and it's like, I feel like there's a misconception that people that are for choice and competition are anti-teacher. Like you can believe two things at once. You can believe teachers are underappreciated. We need to look at, increasing their salaries, and you can believe that our children need better results and better outcomes and more options. You can believe both.
I agree. Let
me ask you a question. School choice, more benefit, more setbacks. What do you think?
Way easily more benefit.
Short term, more benefits. Long term, more setbacks.
Why do you say long term, more setbacks?
Because you're going to have a whole generation of kids that did not.
So long term, we should just keep doing what we've been doing the last 20 years and hoping that maybe we can get our bureaucrats in there. We can get our people in there. Okay.
No, we should. These ideas, these great ideas that we have for the School of the Arts and for military magnet. Why couldn't they say, okay, cool, Stahl's going to have the military magnet program that's going to function here, and so we're going to send those kids to a public school that they can get this access to within the confines of the programs schools that we already have. Let's make North Charleston the academic magnet school, and those kids are going to go there. And then the School of Arts program, that's going to go to Wando. And then all of this. So now we're building into the infrastructure.
We're getting somewhere.
Exists, as opposed to let's build a brand new building that we're going to take kids out of the schools that already exist. I don't think that
we're getting somewhere. We're getting somewhere. We're getting somewhere, though, right? We both want the same thing. We both want that public school to be performing better. Are they going to perform better if we give them more money? We've already ruled. I've already won that point. So what you're saying is reform. We need to reform and maybe treat them like a charter school, or maybe turn a public school into a charter school. What my argument is we both want better public schools. I'm saying they will be better when there's a new school that opens up that creates some competition, because everyone will be working harder. Everyone will be running a tight ship, just like Joe Pye. Because, oh man, if we're not running a tight ship and doing the best job that we can possibly do with the resources that we have, then it's possible that some kids are going to go to the school across the street. We better step up our game for these kids. We better make sure we're doing the right thing. We better make sure that they're going to pass these tests. We better make sure that we're competitive. It's a fire lit under these guys.
Well, what if they don't have to take all the tests though?
What's up?
What if we as a charter school, I get to give you the numbers that I want you to get. I don't even know. We don't. How do you measure effectiveness at a charter school?
So you can measure. There's numerous metrics of success. I can't. You're obviously smarter in the education industry than me. You can advocate for a government regulation to be put on the charter and private schools. But what I would argue back is the public education system here is failed. So to add any kind of government regulation that has proven to be a failure for the last, can we agree, 20, 50, 100 years here? We should be talking about new creative and bold solutions like completely privatizing the school system and abolishing the monopolies that we have with public schools. The monopolies are creating these tenured teachers who will make mistakes and not get fired because of their tenure. Whereas at a private school, for example, if you're getting bad service, that person's more likely to be fired. And the kid is going to end up getting the best result. The kid is going to end up getting the best product. And so what it comes down to is giving people more options. And if people had more of a choice, I think you would see more competition. And I don't think that's anti-teacher.
What happens when you no longer have a place to send the kids that you can kick out of schools anytime you want to because you're a charter school? There's
a demand. You just mentioned. So what should we do with those kids? You're already saying, well, there's a demand. There's all these kids that are getting kicked out of charter school. The current charter schools, there's a demand. Maybe that's a really good business opportunity for somebody to start a school for troubled kids and charge a tuition rate. And maybe if parents were having to pay $19,000 a year in property taxes to fund the public schools, they would have enough money to send their kids to that private school that could open up and meet that demand that you're talking about. Because I think that's a legitimate thing that you're saying. If there's a demand for it, go ahead.
I would say that crime is going to skyrocket because those kids that we're kicking out of these schools are now on the streets because they're not going to go to your private school for
kids are going to get kicked out of school. Kids are going to get kicked out of school whether they're public or private. There's always going to be kids that are going to get kicked out of school.
An increased number. Listen to my point.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's going to be eradicated one way or the other. I'm saying that number will increase because now all schools have the ability to say, you know what, you're not living up to our standards, get out of here. And now there's no public school system for them to fall back onto because we've privatized everything.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
They don't want to go to Give Hands. They don't want to go to Berkeley Alternative. They're out of here. So what are they doing? Now we have increased numbers of kids on the streets, which means crime skyrockets.
So don't you think it would be bad for business for all these kids to be out on the streets and not have a place to go to school? There would be a demand. And just because you're bringing it up proves that there would be a demand, because you're smart enough as a community activist and advocate, your ears to the streets, you know what's going on. I mean, I'm sorry if I'm mislabeled, but
I just don't do that one.
Okay. Well, my point is the fact that you are aware enough to know that, hey, if there is an opportunity for all the smart kids to get better opportunities, there had damn sure better be some opportunities for those kids that aren't going to get the best test scores right away and are going to need a little bit more instruction and are going to need a little bit individualized instruction and maybe a smaller class size, Rajon. Maybe they'll need a smaller class size. Maybe the parent, when they're shopping schools, like what people do when they're moving to a new place, they shop schools. Maybe, having a little bit of a choice rather than just, oh, okay, well, there's only one school in this zip code. I hope it works out. It looks like, they have a 2.8 star rating, man. I hope it works out. I guess, they haven't been getting enough funding. Don't you think it'd be better to shop through schools?
Yeah, I think as a father of 5 children in a 2-parent household as a college educated father, that makes complete sense to me. But guess what? I'm not a single mom working 3 jobs, trying to make ends meet with 5 kids running around here that I'm trying to figure out what to do with. I'm not, that parent's not shopping for schools. That parent's
You don't think so?
No.
So if that 19,000 per pupil followed them to whatever school they chose and they get to choose the best, I think the single mom is more likely to want to seek out better opportunities to make a better way for themselves. Because look, if that 19,000 follows the kid, sorry, go ahead.
No, I would hope so. But the problem is that a lot of things that we hope to happen don't. And that's the other issue about education that we don't talk about, because you have to contextualize this part. There are parents, I'm gonna flat out say it, there are parents that don't care.
True.
There are parents that, okay, cool, you give me $19,000 to go to any school. What's the closest one? You going to that one?
Yep, I agree.
Oh, you mean also it's privatized? Because if you privatize something, right, and you want deregulation, you're for smaller government, I'd imagine, right? So there's not gonna be a whole lot of oversight on these things. So when
there will be
kids out,
there's gonna be tons of oversight by people like you, people like the Post and Courier, people like investigative journalists. There's going to be third-party education scores that are going to come in. They're going to say, hey, we need to rate this charter school based on merit compared to other charter schools. So there's going to be all eyes on this new new school.
No power.
What's that?
We get to fuss with no power. We get to fuss and say my biggest issue.
No, you can take your business elsewhere.
Yeah,
if you don't like it right now, you can't. You can't take your business elsewhere if you're unhappy with the product. If you're unhappy with the school, transfer.
Right. I could. Rajon, 2-parent home.
Right.
Good income. 2 children in college. I could.
Right.
Mom struggling to make ends meet, working 3 jobs. 5 kids running around in these here parts. I'm talking about kids who go to school because if I don't go to school, I'm not eating lunch today.
Yep. Many of them. Many of them out there
are not shopping. They're not taking the catalog and flipping through to see
Maybe not.
what the great options
are. Maybe not.
Well,
Maybe not.
They might if it exists. They might if it exists.
So you're saying because your argument is because there's a section of people who will not utilize the choice for better opportunities, we should deny the choice for better opportunities for everyone, because you got to know there's some people who will not take the choice for a better opportunity. Some people will make bad choices, but we should still give opportunities to the majority of people who are seeking them out. There's always going to be people who make bad decisions for themselves. People smoke. You know what I'm saying?
Why does the government exist?
Why does the government exist? I'm the wrong person to ask this question, brother.
Why does the government exist?
To secure our rights. Secure our rights. That's it. Basic rights.
So what did the Constitution say about why we needed a government?
You tell me. Where are you going with it?
Provide for the common good.
Okay.
It's provide for the
where does it say provide for the common good in the Constitution?
And the government is created to provide for the common good, for the public good. That's one of the main purposes of the Constitution, because there's certain things that if there was not a regulation that said you couldn't do it, you'd do it. If you could own people and it wasn't in the Constitution, you'd do it.
No. That's not my position.
Not you particularly. I'm talking about if it was when it was legal to own people, they owned people in our country. They had to write a constitutional law that said you can't own people. So these laws that are created, the government that we live under was created to provide for those who can't provide for themselves and to stop things for people from doing things that if there was no law, why do we have a speed limit? Because if there was no speed limit, people just drive 1,000,000 miles an hour down the road.
Okay, well, I understand, and I'm not a complete anarchist, Razor, so I'm not against all government, but I think that there, of course, the common good, I get it. I would say back to you, the 10th Amendment says anything not mentioned in the first 9 amendments should be left to the states. I would say the Department of Education is absolutely unconstitutional according to those standards, and I think education best done on a local level with local advocates who know the local cultures. They are the best equipped to make the educational decisions, not Columbia. And right now, Columbia bureaucrats are who's writing curriculums. Washington, D.C. bureaucrats, people that aren't even in our state, are who's writing our curriculums.
That's not true. Teachers are involved in the writing of curriculum.
There are curriculum committees. I've been to some of these curriculum committee meetings at school boards.
Teachers are heavily involved in the writing. Like teachers of the year, the top teachers from each school district are all involved in the writing of curriculum year after year.
I'm very aware. My point is decentralization and choice, more options for everybody creates more opportunities. And then to your point of the most extreme example of the mother that's the single mom, and that was my mom. My mom was a single mom with multiple kids. And I actually did go to a charter school. And so, maybe we didn't fit that extreme example, but my argument is the private schools would even be better. The private schools would even be better when they have enough, when a gas station opens up across the street, they're going to have to compete with one another. It's a natural occurrence of life. Competition has given us the most greatest society. Competition has given us the moon, going to the moon. Competition is giving us the ability to call over a mobile phone. That's the same concept here. And so will there always be a demand for a certain amount of people who are, less privileged and they need an educational opportunity? Yes. And that's why conversations like these are happening for those people who do fall through the cracks. If there's a demand, if there's a new private school that needs to be opened because, say, all the public schools are gone, that's a business opportunity for somebody to potentially say, man, there's this many people who have that 19,000 following them wherever school they go to. Man, it might make sense to start a school for the underprivileged here. There's a real problem. Diddy did that in Harlem. Diddy opened up his own charter schools in Harlem because he believed in what I believe in, is that you don't have to rely on government to save us. So that's the premise.
Diddy funded charter schools. Diddy didn't have. I promise you, Diddy doesn't step foot in those schools to do anything other than
Well, I don't think he's busy with Revolt, but you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, but that goes back to the point about, again, those resources. He could have took those exact same resources and said, okay, cool. These millions of dollars that I'm going to put into creating my own schools in Harlem, I'm going to put money into these schools that exist.
That are wasting money. There, and New York's public school system is hundreds of millions, billions of dollars in debt. They're begging the federal government for a bailout. What smart billionaire would want to give money to a failing system? I would say, hey, I want to create better opportunities. These guys have the results. I want people who are bringing results to Harlem. I don't want my Harlem, the people that I've grown up around, I don't want those same exact people to go through the same crap education system that I went through. I want to create better results. So I think it's well intended.
No, I agree with you. I just come back to the fact that when we get these great ideas for these programs and stuff like that, we can just put them in the schools that already exist. I have a nonprofit, right? I don't want to build a school for boys. I want my nonprofit to be able to push into the schools that exist to help the boys that are already there.
I love that.
That's like in my heart. That's what I want. Now, again, that may be pie in the sky, but back to the bureaucracy part, I got to go through all of these hoops for people just to say, hey, we want you to come in and work with our kids. I got a track record of working with kids since 2000.
Yeah. And that makes you valuable. So if the smart businessman was watching this and they were smart with their money and how they invested, they'd say, I want to pay that guy $500,000 a year because that guy knows what the hell he's doing. He's got some skills. He knows how to effectively communicate. That's the guy I want on my roster. So you're valuable in a private school system.
If that guy's watching, then Low Country Youth Services could definitely use your support.
Right on.
like Frank said, the system makes it harder for that good money to make the change because there's so much bureaucracy.
I can agree with that.
You know, it's
lots of waste.
Yeah,
I agree. No, I just going back to this point. Back to see this point. Sorry. I think you're absolutely right. There's definitely waste in the public school system, but again, that goes back to what are we doing with these school boards? Who are we hiring? How are we hiring them in? And how do we what oversight are we putting on them to make sure that they're doing the things that they said they're going to do? I have a specific school board member that I'm not going to mention, but I asked them when they were running, you've been on this seat. What have you done that will allow that people should support and be behind? And they couldn't mention anything that they did in the last time that is substantive, that shows growth in it. But they were like, no, vote for me though. I wouldn't vote for you.
Right.
You can't even tell me what you did.
Right.
You should at least be able to lie. But
show me something measurable. Show me some data. Right. What have you done? What have you done for me?
I moved the metrics here. I suggested these things. We implemented these programs in schools. We didn't do none of that. So I think that comes back to y'all's point. I understand what you're saying, create the competition and let the market, but you also got to look at private versus public. Public organizations aren't created for the same reasons that private organizations are. They're not. So they have different sets of rules. They have different sets of standards. And when you have a school, okay, you want to privatize schools? Let's look at what happened with the prisons when they privatized those.
Totally not analogous. That's not analogous. It's not analogous. That's disanalogous. No, because in the case of the choice and competition and privatizing schools, there's a customer, the customer that we need to create the best possible product and outcome for. And so I believe that human nature rises to the occasion when there's competition. Us as men have all felt that in our lives, where we got to step our game up when there's competition. And private prisons have turned into local bribery, have turned into local cronyism. So I'm a defender of the free market. I'm not a defender of crony capitalism.
When you get rid of the public option, remember we talk about like the privatization of healthcare.
I don't have a problem with keeping a public. Sorry, go ahead.
So like the public option provides for that the people that we like to forget about. The people that are like, you know what? If we gotta lose somebody, let's lose them.
Sad.
And I anytime we're having a discussion surrounding that, I sort of cringe because for a long time, the people that we were just ready to let go were people that grew up like I grew up. People who are from where I'm. Those kids at North Charleston High School, I could have been one of those kids. So I deserve the best education. And those kids deserve the best education. I think you're saying the exact same thing. I think we're saying a lot of the same things in different words. I think we both agree on this. We both think that there should be schools that provide for kids who want an education. I think we're both saying.
Can I ask you one question? I'm so sorry.
Oh, Cook.
Because I think obviously there's a lot of common ground. We hit it back and forth a little bit, but would you agree, and this might upset some people, but would you agree, based on your experience, you have way more experience teaching in the education system than I do. I was a poli-sci major, so this is definitely not my, but would you agree, based on your experience, that too much money is wasted, and in just generally speaking, not speaking specific, my ring light might go off. Generally speaking, is too much money wasted in administration and having 20 vice principals and having 30 guidance counselors and paying all their benefits. And, I'm not saying these people don't show up to work every day and try to do a good job, but I'm saying, do you think that central planning, top-down central planning is working? And do you think that too much money could potentially be being wasted that, in administrative costs that could be put into the classroom? Can we at least agree on that?
I definitely agree on that. I would definitely agree on that. But I think that there has to be a more concerted effort to look at what returns we're getting on the investment in those administrative positions. So, like, for example, a school psychologist is a great idea. And I was talking earlier about to Shakim about when my daughter went to Pinewood Prep. And the first thing we did was we walked through the school and we went from classroom to classroom meeting these teachers. One, I noticed that the classroom size is just space-wise was much smaller than I saw in public schools. Like I said, right. Excuse me, capacity was 20 students in those rooms, like total. But the thing that really stood out to me was when we met the guidance counselor. As a kid growing up in schools, what I understood a guidance counselor to be was the person that you go to when you have a problem. Guess what? That's not what guidance counselors are supposed to do. Guidance counselors are supposed to be the people that make sure that you get to college.
Right.
That's their primary. This was to guide you
or trade
to your
school
career, to careers, or to trade school, or to college. This was to guide you through the process of graduating from high school or from elementary school or from middle school.
I'm not saying get rid of all the guidance counselors.
Right. So no. What I'm saying is that we need to look at how we're allocating those resources. So I'm not just saying throw money at the situation. I'm saying strategically, let's look at the money that we're giving to these schools. And if that means we need to give them more money, then we give them more money. But when we're giving them more money, we're giving them money to bring in a school psychologist, school psychiatrist, not one that they have to share between 3 schools. Do you know?
Yeah, usually there's one for 3,000 kids. There's like one school that's still
right.
bad. That's still
right.
bad.
And that's terrible, right? Each school should have their own, if not one for every grade level. There should be a school psychiatrist for every grade level in the school. Yeah. That's money that would never be wasted in a school.
I can agree with that.
Yeah. So
I just think the top-down central planning, humans are imperfect. And when humans try to top-down centrally plan, these bloated, massive school district budgets that we see, they're full of debt. They plan on paying it off, sometime down in the future. DD2 right now, it's almost it's just under $800 million. That's more than the entire county council budget times 3 right now. The school district debt is approaching $800 million. The county's debt is less than $220 million. So what I'm saying is this is way too bloated of costs. It is overblown how bloated. And so if we can, look at nuanced solutions like charter schools, which to me, I prefer the private schools, but if we can look at the nuanced charter schools where there is the input, and that's what they've done in Berkeley County. That's why they've brought in a lot of the local elected officials. They brought in community leaders. They brought in people from all sides of the table so that they can have a voice in what's going on in the school. They put them all on the board of directors. It wasn't just some CEO that came. Not every businessman is an evil person. There's a lot of these people are good intended too. And so when we're looking at these bond referendums and this massive debt, I don't think we can just keep raising everybody's taxes to pay for a bad school system. I think it's time to look at creative solutions like this.
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right there, and that's a place we definitely agree. I honestly think we agree on most of this. It's just so what I find, especially because with the amount of people that I speak to on a daily basis, is we agree on 90% of things as human beings. Like I just think we do. I think we agree on like basic things like this is a hat. Like we'd agree on that. Like this is a phone, right?
Or even Bill of Rights. Like right. If you look at JFK, man, sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, but I'm saying the 10% of things that we disagree on, that 5 to 10% of things we disagree on, we get hung up on those things. So me and you are probably saying a lot of the same stuff, but it's like 5% of the things that we believe when it comes to schooling, we disagree on. And the thing that we disagree on is how to make it happen in terms of making this thing better for the kids. Because like you said, I think the point that you made that it's all about the kids is absolutely correct. But I think that we cannot say it's all about the kids, F the teachers. That's my whole thing.
I don't think we should say F the teachers. I think if you can I ask you a quick question. So what did you think about when, for example, when a lot of the teachers maybe you didn't follow it. Did you see any of the teachers protest going back to school and returning to schools last fall in September? Did you see them with their cowbells and holding up signs? Did you see any of that DD2 protest at all?
I think I did see it on my social media when they were thing.
That's fine. We won't get into it then.
I have said this though. I said if I had to teach during COVID, I would have quit.
What? Yeah. Do you think
I'm not doing this?
There should be an in-person option? Do you think everything should be virtual? Just say if you're in DD2, do you think everything should be virtual or should there be an in-person option?
I think until we have at least 50% vaccination, there should always be there should always be a virtual option.
Virtual option. We all agree on that.
I don't think.
Like, do you think it's a good thing that they kept kids 100% virtual from August to February 22nd? And I'll give you one fact. The city of San Francisco is suing the school district of San Francisco because there's been a 56% increase in child suicides because of the lockdowns and the effects on mental health that the lockdowns and not being in school is having on children socially. So this is a lawsuit, Democrats suing Democrats. And, I just think this highlighted school choice for me because it should be the parents' choice in my view on, okay, if we want to take the risk and go to the brick and mortar, let's make that choice. Or if we'd like to go on the virtual aspect, there's going to be a lot of teachers that are going to say, I would rather do the virtual option. I think they should have just as much of those choices as possible too. And what we found in DD2.
But the parents are making that decision from a different standpoint than teachers are making it from. The parents are making a decision from, I want to get rid of my kids.
Oh,
the teachers are making them stand.
Can I catch you on that?
Oh, go for it.
Monopolies create resentment towards their customers, and I think that is part of it. Parents aren't bad people for wanting their kids to go back in school. There's study after study that says kids back in schools with that virtual face-to-face learning, not only do they learn better, but it's great for their mental health. And being locked at home, that's a way worse alternative.
No, but that's the thing, though. But see, that's the thing. No, I actually agree with the fact that it is better, right? But if there's a pandemic and I have a chance to be at risk for a disease, that parent isn't factoring in the teacher's risk.
Well, no. How are they not?
The parents not taking.
What if the teachers have decided, hey, I'm under 4? Go ahead.
What are the parents risking by sending their kids to school?
Go ahead. Sorry, my light came off. What are the parents
risking by sending their children into the school building?
They could get infected. They could come across another kid who's carrying coronavirus, and they could bring it home and potentially infect the parent or infect the grandparent and die. Is that where you're going with it?
That's a risk that they're willing to take as a parent.
Yeah.
If I have a teacher, am not willing to take that risk, why are you enforcing that risk on me?
Ooh, force. See, I'm not for enforcing anything. I'm not for a coercive. I'm not for the coercive society. Forcing is taxes, man.
What building? You say I have to be here with the kids. You're forcing me.
No, you're not. You're not forcing. There's no force because the teachers, a lot of them, the majority of them here in DD2, they had a choice to whether they wanted to do the virtual academy for the whole year, and it was a decision that parents and teachers committed to, and they were told, hey, listen, even if we go back face to face, you're going to be stuck in this option. You're going to be stuck in this virtual option. Do you want to commit to this now? Based on what we knew in the numbers in August. We knew in August that teachers that were under 40 or 50, which I would love to know what the numbers are, but the chances of them dying from a virus and I'm not minimizing COVID because it's a real thing, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but let's be honest here, man. How many kids have died from coronavirus in South Carolina? I want to say there's been 2, and I would love to be corrected on that. And then teachers, how many of them there's been one instance that I've heard of that everybody, made a big emotional stink about. But at the end of the day, that's awful. I don't want those people to die. Right. But I also don't want kids killing themselves because they're forced to be stuck at home by some bureaucrat who thinks that they can make medical decisions for children and parents. I think those children and parents should make those medical decisions for themselves. Just like I would compare it to marijuana. I think in marijuana legalization, you're making the medical choice for yourself. Some may say that it's a bad medical choice. Some may say it's a good medical choice, but it should be up to the individual, not some
abortion,
bureaucrat.
Right?
What's that?
Like abortion, right?
So what's your analogy? So what's your analogy?
Like abortion, right? Like people should be able to decide whether they want to have abortions or not, right?
So whether they want to end the life and infringe on the rights of a fetus, I don't believe in that choice. I believe in the choice of contraception, abstinence. I believe in expanding birth control, which not many Republicans are. So that's like 4 choices. Not having sex.
Isn't that oversight?
Go ahead.
Isn't that government oversight? Wouldn't that be government oversight?
What, expanding birth control? That would be less government oversight if we took away licensing for birth control and allowed it to be over the counter. allowing things like the implant, things that are right now you need a doctor's prescription. I would want less licensing and less government, so it's more accessible to people and less unwanted babies are born. So that's the counter argument. My counter argument to you is in New York, Shakeem, correct me on this.
That was a really good pivot, by the way. I just want to point that
out.
out.
In New York, sorry. Here we go. Like, so in New York, more babies are being aborted than born. So there's a negative population growth, or excuse me, more black babies are being aborted than born. Mm-hmm. And so this is a negative population growth. So yes, I'm all for choices, man. I'm all for choices. I'm also for the Bill of Rights, and I believe that when Roe versus Wade was enacted, they didn't have the science that we have now on fetuses. We know now, I can send you a Princeton study, that life begins at conception. And so if you're okay with killing a baby with a heartbeat because you can't afford it, no, that's fine. That's okay. But maybe if someone else is, that's between them and their God. I'm not here to judge them.
I was just making a point when you was talking about, like forcing and,
So basically, Rajon, you're saying that he's being hypocritical. You're saying, in one instance, you're pro-choice, and then in this instant, you're not being pro-choice. So basically, that's what you're saying. Let's get down to you're saying CJ is presenting hypocritical arguments, conflicting arguments.
And respectfully. I think we pick our things that we are these things about.
No, the difference is one is a medical choice. One is a medical choice. And so, a medical choice to, like use marijuana or do something potentially harmful to yourself. I don't believe that killing an innocent baby is a medical choice. So if you think that ending a life that has a heartbeat at 6 weeks, if you are morally okay with that.
It's not about what I want to know. It's actually what I'm telling you.
I'm just saying it's not analogous because we're talking about health decisions and you're talking about murdering a baby.
What I'm saying is I talked about the risk that a parent takes sending their child to school. When a parent decides to take that risk, you said that's their choice. That's what they want to do. That's what impacts them. I'm saying the teacher is forced when they open that door and they say, "Oh, we're sending all the kids to school. I have to be here."
Who has a gun to the teacher's head that says you have to be in the classroom?
The gun of my livelihood. The gun of my livelihood. The gun of my lights being on. The gun of being able to eat.
Or you could go across the street to the school, and you could go work somewhere else. So it's not force. Force is when men with guns come and put a gun to your head and say, "You didn't pay your taxes. You need to go in a cage. You didn't pay your property taxes. We're seizing your property." That's force. Force is being put in handcuffs. So that's a hyperbolic. That's a hyperbolic word, though.
Words. That's really cool, man. You do really good with semantics. This is really
I'm not
good.
playing semantics. I'm not playing semantics.
Because then,
I'm not playing semantics.
Because then I said, well, then a woman should be able to choose what she does with her body in terms of a baby, medical decision.
She should.
You said no, because you're going to kill somebody.
Yeah. She should. She had the choice whether or not she wanted to have sex. She had the choice not to use a contraception. She had choice not to use birth control. That's a lot of choices. I just named 3 right there.
She don't get all the choices. She can't go to.
So what's the last choice? So what's abort? What's that?
Or she don't get to go to academic magnet or school of the arts. What about all the choices? You wanted them to have all the choices when it came to the schools.
Yeah, I am for the choices. Just not for the choice of ending a life. How is it empathetic to take the position of ending lives and more black babies are being aborted than born? How is that the empathetic position? That's not a moral high ground, Rajon.
That's pretty cool that you threw black people in there to make your point as well. I love.
Oh no! Don't turn into that because this is a factual data metric, man. This is not something I'm making up.
I have another number for you.
Okay.
What's the number?
More Caucasians are dying than being born. That's also a number.
Okay.
Right?
Is that true? Is that right? Is that
true? Is that true?
I'm not sure. I'll take your word for it if that's
true. It's true.
Okay.
It's true. So we can just do numbers. I can just keep saying numbers. But the point is that
you didn't trust my numbers earlier, and I can send it to you.
No, I do trust your numbers. I told you. You sent me the numbers. I said I hadn't seen them when you brought it up. Shakim, didn't I say I hadn't seen the numbers, so I can't speak on numbers that I haven't seen? And then we kept talking about it. When you came on, you brought up $19,000 per student, and I said $11,000 per student, and then we talked about the fact that $19,000 also includes building these other buildings that you have to staff. And his name is Shakim, and you have to staff and they have to maintain all of these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Had she had school choice, she wouldn't have gotten pregnant. I see you, Frank. I see you, Frank. No, but my point was,
had she had school choice, and I think you're trying to give me the connotation that I'm bringing up. Like I brought up the fact that I was just retorting to your choice argument. So I would not have brought up black abortion in New York if we didn't bring up abortion. So that's not something I would just bring up.
White abortion rate in New York.
What's that?
What's the white abortion rate in New York?
What's the white abortion rate in New York? So is that question to imply that somehow I'm only cherry picking abortion rates for black people rather than white people? Is that?
We're going to talk about the number. If we're going to bring numbers, I'd just rather you. We actually had this entire discussion without bringing out black people once, didn't we, Shakim?
I see. I know where both of y'all going.
It doesn't matter. The argument still has merit. You know.
Did we? Shakim, did we talk about school choice without mentioning black students once?
No, with Elvin, you maybe, but Elvin started off talking about
me and you.
Yeah,
we talked for 2 hours about school choice and didn't bring up black students once. We were talking about students.
Ray Sean.
You started talking about abortion, and the first number you came out with off the top of your head, it's like the black on black crime number that people like to bring up.
I understand where you're coming from. I hate when people bring up the black on black crime numbers in Chicago because I lived in Chicago and I know what it's like for people in Chicago to have to be cited as a statistic. And I apologize if I came off that way. Truthfully, I wasn't trying to be arrogant. I was just trying to make my point with a data metric that might have given you a different perspective, because there's a lot of different things. Like you mentioned the echo chamber, like there's a lot of different ways to look at it. And to me, I think it's empathetic to protect innocent life. And you see it as empathetic to protect the women's right. I think it is nuanced. And that's why I'm not demonizing you for your position. I'm terribly sorry if I came off as trying to.
Oh no! It's just we're doing a back and forth thing, and I want to make sure that I'm playing my part as well.
Well, let's not play semantics, man. This
is mad respectful. Like, and this is honestly, this is the type of stuff that I enjoy. If it wasn't something I enjoyed, trust me,
let's do it again one day, man.
You got to come on the show.
I would love to, man. You've given me way too much time, man. I appreciate and I'd love to come with something much more prepared, and we could do it much better.
What I'd like to do is I want to run down like a bunch of topics. Like I'd want to go through a bunch of topics because I think there's an opportunity to have that discussion. But the reason I got on that point about that is because and I hope that people, that people that support you, because I know you got a lot of supporters and people who love you and dig what you do, because I dig what you do as well in a lot of ways. I know the work that you put into what you do, and I respect it, a lot. But I want them to get out of this idea that simply mentioning black people in the midst of a discussion about something changes the narrative or makes them more right than they originally were. You can make those same points. You can make those same points, because if you're going to bring up white things, then I want you to also research. If you're going to research the amount of black people that do this, then tell me the amount of white people that do this. If you can tell me black crime, tell me about white and white crime. Tell me about Hispanic crime.
Can I say it back to you? Can I retort back to you? Then the next time we do it, let's take identity politics completely out of it. Because if you're willing to walk away from identity politics in an intellectual discussion, then there's no reason that I should bring it into it.
I'm here for
and tribalism. I can't do the tribalism. The Republicans did this. I'm not here to defend Republicans or Turtle Man Mitch McConnell or Orange Man Trump. I'm not here to defend them, but I will defend free market capitalism. I will defend individual liberty, the Bill of Rights. I believe in that stuff, man. And I think there's less people on the right that are truthfully constitutional conservatives. It's shrinking. On the right, it's more reactionaries. It's more big government. The Proud Boys were here in Somerville, where I'm at, and I love Somerville, man. And even the Democrats and Republicans get along in Somerville, man. We don't have that kind of division here, and and so when the Proud Boys came to like my favorite bar where we had our election night watch party for Lewis Smith, and the Proud Boys came like a couple nights after, and they got kicked out, and it turned into a big thing. Like, that's not what we want, man. They believe in using violence to push their message, and that's the kind of, like, the right is not pushing those people out of the party right now. There's a big story right now with the Post and Courier, with Charleston Republican Party. And Shakim, if you're listening, Maurice Washington had to stand there and listen to a lady talk about QAnon, and it was Black Lives Matter that did it on January 6th. And It was Antifa in disguise. All this nonsense, man. All this nonsense. And listen to this. Talk about cancel culture, Rajon. Some guy got up. I think his name's Dan Savage. He's an attorney. He got up. The Post and Courier published his whole speech. And he's like, listen, I've been on the right, but I did not vote for Donald Trump because of this kind of rhetoric. This kind of rhetoric is going to push moderates on the other side. This kind of rhetoric. And so you know what happened? This is the conclusion. All the Trump supporters were all attacking his business all throughout the week. He got attacks from the state party. And, that's cancel culture. So they want to cancel this guy because he doesn't bow down to Trump the way that you. So that's what. Yeah, you see, and so that's where I exist. I exist as I try to be intellectually honest. I focus first on the issues rather than the tribe. So if that gives you any perspective.
No, I love that. And in fact, I mean, shoot, now that I know you live in Somerville, we got to get like coffee or lunch or something because that's
man.
That's where I live. Like I am a big believer in like diversity of thought, man. Like I really, really am. So that's why like I'll sit here and I'll engage because one, just from you talking, from our discussion, from the few like hour we've been on together, I've learned a lot just from listening to you, and I hope that I've done something to make you.
I watch your show all the time, man. I watch your show all the time.
But if you watch my show, then you know that I don't sit in this bubble of Democrat this, Republican that. I try to have discussions from substantive and meaningful ways where we can have. When we had the election coverage, I had Republicans on, I had Democrats on, I had people who were running independent party. I had a young lady who was running. I had two people on that claimed they were running for the presidency of the United States of America. So like,
I think I saw one of them.
Yeah, I mean, like, I try to open that door. So I don't want to live in a silo. I don't want to live in this foxhole of my own thoughts and my own opinions. I think it's important that we have these discussions. I think it's important that we have them in a genuinely open way. Who that? Frank Brennan? Who's Frank Brennan?
Makes everybody better. Makes everybody better, man.
Well, Frank, next discussion you can join on. You can always come on, Frank.
Gotta go watch the All-Star game.
Yeah, hey fellas, we're gonna wrap this up. But this has been a wonderful discussion. I really, really appreciate it. I think we learned a lot, and I think basically what it all boils down to, what benefits the most, right? Because we do have trade-offs. We know nothing is absolute. There's always going to be positive and negatives. We just kind of put it together and see which one is the most beneficial. Me personally, I'm for the choice option right now because I think there needs to be competition in the field. Mm-hmm. And I also believe that the traditional schools need to have more flexibility to do what they need to do. I believe bureaucracy has been holding them down so long. And the school choice has been an offshoot of that problem. And that's why people are trying to create more creative ways in order to have their children taught. And they believe that, if I don't like what the school is offering, I need to be able to take my business elsewhere. But also I see what Rajon and a lot of people say by, traditional schools are being left holding the bag at the end of the day because people are fleeing, and those students that are stuck there, what are they offered as an option? Yeah. So
that's the nuance.
It's interesting, man. DD2, CJ has done a lot of behind the scenes work with DD2, the schools, and understanding. Rajon has been in the mix, teaching, and it's kind of interesting to hear how DD2 actually operates. You brought up some good numbers, CJ, about the cost per pupil, and we always wonder, how does DD2 outperform Charleston County School District when CCSD has the greater budget? But Rajon brought up the fact that they have more schools also, and they're building more schools, and that's why you see a lot of the increases in the cost per pupil. So it's a lot of things baked into it when you start really getting to the numbers and trying to really hash out and iron out what is best for our students. But I think that all of us have one goal in mind, is helping the students. One last question, Rajon. Since you've been a teacher, like I said, you still are plugged in. What do you think about the teachers union?
So you mean like us adopting one, or the ones that currently exist?
No, well, let's say the ones that are currently exist are like pseudo here.
They are.
They're kind of like pseudo unions. But what do you think about having like a full-fledged, as a teacher, from a teacher perspective, now you can speak real openly, but what do you think a teachers union would be beneficial, in the state of South Carolina, especially in DD2, from your experience?
So the problem with teachers unions or any unions is that unions are designed to make it harder to fire people who aren't doing what they're supposed to do. It really forces the way my understanding of it is, yes, you're going to get better benefits, but it actually ends up making people regress to the mean more. So there's no benefit in exceptionalism, because no matter what, you're here. And that's a lot of stuff what the unions do. It standardizes a lot of things. I think it could provide for more opportunities. I think it could make it a more attractive profession for teachers in the state of South Carolina if there was a union. But I also think that it would make it a lot harder to get quality education accomplished. But I mean, like you said, for the last 100 years, we've sort of been failing the kids anyway. So you might as well try something to make these teachers who are here feel like they're appreciated. And that's the point that I was making earlier, is that if the teachers don't feel appreciated and valued, they're going to keep walking. And when you have teachers walking away from the profession and you have less people graduating in the profession of education, that makes it harder and harder, especially when you're going to replace them with people like Teach for America.
Mm-hmm.
Who aren't
Can I make a couple points?
Definitely.
Agrees.
Watch it. If I was a teacher watching Republicans give all these crony tax breaks to all these big businesses before I got my step increase, before I got my cost of living increase, I would be outraged. So I agree that teachers are undervalued. And it's obvious if you look at the data that teachers compared to other states, not only do they, they teach better when they're being paid more, but what you find is that the teachers here, like, for example, they just got their step increase from 2019 passed through the legislature most recently. And, my main point is we're giving all these tax breaks individually to these crony companies like Boeing, Volvo, yet we can't afford to pay the teachers. So that's one thing. Secondly, on the point of unions, I'm for unions as long as they're voluntary. But the union bosses never want them to be voluntary. They want to use intimidation. And that's why, so I'm for voluntary coalitions of people coming together to negotiate better benefits. I'm for that for health insurance. If we deregulated all health insurance and we put 500 people agreed to join a risk pool, people with pre-existing conditions, those 500 people could negotiate a better rate from Aetna if they all came together voluntarily. So I believe in voluntary unions. I don't believe in forced unions. And even the Teachers Association here, like SC for Ed, these are anecdotal stories, but there's been tons of stories that I've heard from teachers that'll say, man, CJ, I agree with everything you're saying, but if I speak out and I say that I want kids to come back to school, these SC for Ed teachers, they're bullying us, they're intimidating us, they're telling us we need to show up at these protests. So you get a lot of it even with the Teachers Association. So I think it should be voluntary. I think it should be their choice, and anybody that's forced or coerced to join or intimidated to join a teachers union, that's sad, man. I feel bad for those teachers.
SC for Ed. So I have a little history with SC for Ed from when I was a teacher. We had that protest that they did at the State House. I want to say it was 2019. Was it 2019? April 2019.
On May Day.
It was like, I remember that event, and that event was a really powerful event. The problem that came is a powerful event, and it was a bipartisan event. I actually remember a certain representative, whose name I won't mention, but they are from this area, actually tried to get up and started to blame a particular party for what was going on, and they got booed.
There's Republicans.
They got booed from the podium. Like, they were like,
"No,
we're not here for that." Like they booed from. They're like, "We're not here for that. This is a bipartisan event. We are here in support of education. We're here in support of what's going on." So I definitely think, like you said, that's another thing. When you talk about unions, you also bring in a certain element that comes with unions that I don't know if South Carolina is really particularly ready for. But so it's just it could work. It could be the worst thing to ever happen. But I think in order, like y'all said, like the points that y'all made earlier, sometimes when things aren't working, you got to try something new to see if that actually to give something to try. Maybe unions is something that we'll try, and then it doesn't work. But in order for a union to work, there has to be that collective buy-in, or you have people that work outside of it. I worked at AT&T, and it wasn't forced that you were in the union, but it was implied that if you worked at AT&T, you was a part of this union. So you're gonna be a part of this union.
See, that's strong arming. That's strong arming. Like that's bad.
You're like, oh, this is your union paper. You don't have to don't have any benefits. And I was like, oh, so I guess you're going to the union.
Well, hey guys, man, we appreciate the talk, man. This has been wonderful, man. I really enjoyed it. We need to finish up that abortion talk too, because I know Raison.
I love it.
Raison wanted to dig in just now. And
I love it.
CJ was looking like, yeah, let's go. So we come back and have that.
Sounds good.
We could. Or we could.
Rajon, I'm thankful. I'm thankful for being able to share the platform with you guys. And if we ever did something like that in the future, man, I'd be super respectful. And there might be some things that people say that disagree, but man, I've changed a lot of people's minds over to my point of view, and I'm sure you have too, man. So I'd just love to have the conversation again if you're down. But I appreciate the time. We've gone on way longer than I thought I would.
Yeah. I'm always down. I'm always down for a conversation. I never try to change people's minds. That's not something I'm in for. I just want to introduce information. I believe that the Bible says one man plants, one man waters, the God gets the increase. And if I can plant the seed in somebody's brain that helps them, that somebody down the road comes in and they say something that is also beneficial, then I'm here for it. It don't have to be me. So like even our conversations is just to plant seeds. I'll never like go in on you. I'll never do that. That's not my way. Shakim will tell you that. But y'all be good, man. I love you. Y'all be good.
All right, y'all, man. Appreciate it. Thanks again. All right,
thanks, guys.